Okay. Sorry. So what we will do is मेरो screen share गर्छु, present now. मेरो स्क्रिन आइरहेछ है सबैलाई? ल राम्रो. ओके, सो हामी स्टार्ट गरौँ है. सो हामीसँग आज 3 आवर्स छ जसमा कि हामीले चाहिँ हिजो बचेको नेटवर्किङको पार्ट थोरै छ त्यो कम्प्लिट गर्छौँ एन्ड देन वी विल गो विथ कम्प्युट सेक्सन. अगेन मैले हिजो नै मोड्युल 5 र 6 भ्याउन सक्थेँ विथिन 2 आवर्स होइन, बट आई डिडन्ट वान्टेड टु डु द्याट किनभने दोज थिङ्स आर भेरी इम्पोर्टेन्ट फर यु गाइज होइन. त्यही भएर मैले 1 by 1 सबै कुराहरू हजुरहरूलाई like AWS account may like telling the concepts and then showing that into the AWS account. That's why time हामीले थोरै लागिरहेछ होइन, but which is fine. So म एकचोटि फेरि रिक्याप गर्छु राइट. This is an automation where you know that extension is okay. So again the scenario is same होइन. हजुरहरूलाई के क्वेसन सोध्नु पर्यो भनेपछि hand raise गरेर unmute गरेर नि सोध्न सक्नुहुन्छ and then you can write your questions in the chat and in between the sections I will go with the questions है त. सो म एकचोटि फेरि रिक्याप गर्छु हिजो हामीले के हेर्यौं भनेर होइन. सो हिजो हामीले नेटवर्किङ एन्ड कन्टेन्ट डेलिभरीको बारेमा हेरिरहेको थियौं. We looked into the networking basics जसमा हामीले how networks work, what is an IP address, what are the types of IP addresses होइन, what is a classless inter-domain routing र यो सबनेट मास्कको रोल के हो होइन, what is a network identifier, what is a host identifier होइन, यिनीहरू सबैको बारेमा हामीले हेर्यौं. We also looked into this part and then section 2 मा we looked into Amazon VPC which is a logically isolated networking solution available in AWS जसको भित्र हजुरले मल्टिपल कम्पोनेन्ट्सहरु जुन फिजिकली अवेलेबल छ त्यसलाई भर्चुअली हजुरले क्रिएट गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ, लाइक राउटर्स, लाइक सबनेट्सहरु हैन, नेट गेटवेहरु, इन्टरनेट गेटवेहरु यदि क्लाउड नभइदिएको भए हजुरहरूले त्यो सबै कुराहरु फिजिकली किनेर कन्फिगर गर्नु पर्थ्यो. We looked into what VPC is, अनि एउटा साइडर रेन्जलाई कसरी चुज गर्ने and then सबनेटिङ कसरी कन्भर्ट गर्ने त्यो ठुलो रेन्जलाई, राइट. And then we also looked into the IP addressing. हामीले VPC साइडर रेन्जमा /16 देखि /28 को बीचमा मात्रै सिलेक्ट गर्न मिल्छ. We talked about reserve IP addresses. So -5 IP addresses हुन्छ if you are creating subnets into the AWS यसको बारेमा नि हेर्यौं. And then we talked a bit about elastic IP addresses जसको डेमो हामीले कम्प्युट सेक्सनमा आज हेर्छौं. We also talked about network interface, route tables, हामीले राउट कसरी डिफाइन गर्ने त्यो सबै कुरा नि हेर्यौं. सेक्सन 3 मा हामीले VPC नेटवर्किङ कम्पोनेन्ट्सको बारेमा हेर्यौं. We talked about internet gateway, इन्टरनेट गेटवेलाई कसरी बनाउने, बनाइसकेपछि राउट टेबलमा कसरी इन्टिग्रेट गर्ने, कसरी राउट डिफाइन गर्ने त्यो कुरा नि हेर्यौं. We again created a network address translation, NAT gateway, त्यो पनि हामीले कसरी अट्याच गर्ने, it's same as इन्टरनेट गेटवे हैन, जसरी हामीले त्यसलाई अट्याच गर्छौं त्यसरी नै हामीले त्यसलाई प्राइभेट गेटवेमा अट्याच गर्छौं. कसैले मलाई भन्न सक्छ व्हाट इज द फंक्शन अफ नेटवर्क एड्रेस ट्रान्सलेसन अथवा नेट गेटवे, त्यसको मेजर काम के हो? कसैले मलाई भन्न सक्छ च्याटमा? एउटा ठुलो प्रब्लम यसले सल्भ गर्छ. हामीले नेट गेटवे किन युज गर्छौं? टु स्टप outbound no this is not the answer. To allow outbound चाहिँ हो हैन, to stop outbound चाहिँ होइन. ओके, दी बेसले इन्टरनेट देखि प्राइभेट नेटवर्कलाई रिक्वेस्ट पठाउन नमिल्न दिन. त्यो पनि त्यसको फंक्सन हो भन्न चाहिँ मिल्दैन हैन. त्यसको कसैले अरु ट्राई गर्छ and then I will tell you guys what's it means a feature. सो नेट गेटवेको काम भने के हो भनेपछि हजुरको प्राइभेट सर्भरहरू जुन प्राइभेट सबनेटमा हुन्छन्, किनभने प्राइभेट सर्भरहरूको त पब्लिक आइपी हुँदैन भनेपछि इन्टरनेटमा त तिनीहरू कनेक्सन गर्न सक्दैनन्, राइट? तर त्यो प्राइभेट नेटवर्कमा भएको सर्भर अथवा डेटाबेसलाई इन्टरनेटमा रिच गरेर कुनै एपिआईलाई हिट गर्नु पर्यो, पब्लिक एपिआईलाई, अथवा कुनै प्याकेज डाउनलोड गर्नु पर्यो भनेपछि त त्यो सर्भर जुन प्राइभेट नेटवर्कमा छ त्यसले त इन्टरनेटसम्म रिच गर्नु पर्यो त्यो प्याकेज डाउनलोड गर्नलाई, हैन? सो त्यो गर्नलाई वी क्यान अट्याच नेटवर्क एड्रेस ट्रान्सलेसन अथवा नेट गेटवे टु द प्राइभेट सबनेट अथवा प्राइभेट राउट टेबल, अनि त्यो युजिङ द्याट नेट गेटवे द्याट सर्भर विल बी एबल टु रिच टु द इन्टरनेट। तर एउटा एकदमै इम्पोर्टेन्ट कुरा के भनेपछि नेट गेटवे इज युनिडाइरेक्सनल। सो सर्भरदेखि इन्टरनेटमा चाहिँ कनेक्सन जान्छ, सर्भरले मात्रै इन्टरनेटसँग कनेक्ट गर्न पायो, तर बाहिरबाट कसैले इन्टरनेटबाट सर्भरलाई प्राइभेट सर्भरलाई एक्सेस गर्न खोज्यो भने द्याट इज नट एलाउडेड थ्रु नेट गेटवे। त्यसको लागि हामीले के युज गर्छौँ? इन्टरनेट गेटवे युज गर्छौँ। इफ वी निड कि समवन takes the public IP of our server and it uses that on the browser and hits it to get the response from the server, त्यसको लागि हामीले इन्टरनेट गेटवे युज गर्छौँ, राइट? सो त्यो हो यसको मेन फङ्सनालिटी। यसको बारेमा नि हेऱ्यौँ हामीले। VPC सेयरिङ त एकदमै मजाले मैले एक्सप्लेन गरेको थिएँ, होइन, विथ सम पिक्चर्स। VPC पेयरिङ पनि हामीले हेऱ्यौँ, हामीले साइट टु साइट VPN पनि हेऱ्यौँ, हाउ वी क्यान कनेक्ट AWS रिसोर्सेस विथ रिसोर्सेस होस्टेड अन अ कोर्पोरेट डेटा सेन्टर, त्यो पनि हेऱ्यौँ, होइन, युजिङ इन्टरनेट। अर्को हामीले AWS डाइरेक्ट कनेक्ट हेऱ्यौँ, जहाँनिर अगेन इट्स द सेम सिनारियो वेयर वी निड टु कनेक्ट AWS रिसोर्सेस द्याट आर होस्टेड अन AWS क्लाउड विथ कोर्पोरेट डेटा सेन्टरको रिसोर्सेस। बट यहाँनिर हामीले इन्टरनेट युज गर्दैनौँ, यहाँनिर हामीले के युज गर्छौँ? फिजिकल फाइबर अप्टिक्स केबल युज गर्छौँ फर बेटर नेटवर्क पर्फर्मेन्स एन्ड हाई डेटा रिलायबिलिटीको लागि। त्यो पनि हेऱ्यौँ हामीले VPC इन पोइन्ट पनि पढ्यौँ, होइन। हामीले ट्रान्जिट गेटवे पनि हेऱ्यौँ, विच इज द सल्युसन इनेबलर फर VPC पेयरिङ एन्ड इट अपरेट्स एज एन हब एन्ड स्पोक मोडल। यसको बारेमा नि हेऱ्यौँ, होइन। सो हामी यति कुरा चाहिँ हेरेका थियौँ। हामीले रेकर्डेड भन्दा पनि मैले हजुरहरूलाई यो सबै कुरा लाइभ नै गरेर देखाएको थिएँ, राइट? अब हामी अगाडि बढौँ। सो सेक्सन 3 मा हामीले VPC नेटवर्किङको कम्पोनेन्ट्स, इन्टरनेट गेटवे, नेट गेटवे, VPC इन पोइन्ट, VPC पेयरिङ, VPC सेयरिङ, साइट टु साइट VPN, डाइरेक्ट कनेक्ट, टायर्स गेटवेको बारेमा मजाले नै हिजोको क्लासमा हेरौँ। नाउ वी अल क्रिएटेड दिस थिङ्स, राइट? मैले यहाँ नोट डाउन नै गरेको छु। हिजो हामीले के बनायौँ? यो साइडर रेन्ज चुज गऱ्यौँ, पब्लिक सबनेट 2टा बनायौँ, प्राइभेट सबनेट 2टा बनायौँ, राइट, विथ 251 IP एड्रेसेस। त्यसपछि हामीले राउटिङ पाथ डिफाइन गऱ्यौँ। वी क्रिएटेड पब्लिक राउट टेबल एन्ड प्राइभेट राउट टेबल, असाइन दिस रेस्पेक्टिभ सबनेट्स टु द राउट टेबल्स, होइन। त्यसपछि हामीले राउटिङ पाथ डिफाइन गऱ्यौँ अथवा राउट डिफाइन गऱ्यौँ हामीले युजिङ इन्टरनेट गेटवे एन्ड नेट गेटवे। यति चाहिँ हिजोको क्लासमा हामीले गरेका छौँ। We even tested that by creating an EC2 instance in a public subnet, right? इन्टरनेट गेटवे हटाएर र इन्टरनेट गेटवे इनेबल गरेर नि। सो यहाँसम्म हामीले गरेका छौँ एन्ड एभ्रिथिङ लुक्स फाइन। तर अब आउँछ कुरा के को भनेपछि नेटवर्क सिक्युरिटीको, विच इज VPC सिक्युरिटीको बारेमा। अब मैले यो सबै कुरा त बनाएँ, होइन, सरी, यो सबै कुराहरू चाहिँ बनाए, तर यहाँनिर अब सिक्युरिटीको कुरा आउँछ। कुन रिक्वेस्टलाई छिर्न दिने मेरो सर्भरसम्म, होइन, अथवा मेरो सबनेटसम्म, अनि कुन नेटवर्क अथवा कुन रिक्वेस्टलाई चाहिँ नछिर्न दिने, त्यो सबै कुरा हामीले अब VPC सिक्युरिटीको पार्टमा हेर्छौँ। सरी। So the first thing is security group. So it's a firewall. It's a virtual firewall available on the AWS VPC. And security groups act at the instance level. Instance भनेको हाम्रो EC2 सर्भर, EC2 सर्भरलाई हामीले इन्स्टेन्स नि भन्छौँ। सो इन्स्टेन्स लेभलमा, सर्भर लेभलमा यो एप्लिकेबल हुन्छ। सो इफ यु सी दिस पिक्टोरियल रिप्रेजेन्टेसन, क्लाउड रिजन भित्र हामीले VPC बनायौँ। VPC भित्र 2टा सबनेट, पब्लिक सबनेट एन्ड प्राइभेट सबनेट, एन्ड पब्लिक सबनेट भित्र नि एउटा सर्भर बनाएको छौं र प्राइभेट सबनेट भित्र पनि एउटा सर्भर बनाएको छौं र दुईटै सर्भरमा हामीले सिक्युरिटी ग्रुप अट्याच गरेका छौं, which is a mandatory thing, हैन। सो सिक्युरिटी ग्रुप अट्याच गर्यौं भनेपछि अब सिक्युरिटी ग्रुपमा हामीले रुल्सहरु डिफाइन गर्न दिन्छौं कि कुन पट भित्र रिक्वेस्ट आयो भनेपछि त्यो पार्टलाई एक्सेप्ट गर्ने कि रिजेक्ट गर्ने, त्यो सबै कुरा हामीले यहाँ डिफाइन गर्न मिल्छ। सो सिक्युरिटी ग्रुप हैव रुल्स that control inbound and outbound instance traffic. So inbound traffic भनेको इन आइराको सर्भरमा आइराको ट्राफिक र आउटबाउन्ड भनेको सर्भरबाट बाहिर गइराको ट्राफिकलाई हामीले कन्ट्रोल गर्न सक्छौं बाइ डिफाइनिङ रुल्स। सो VPC बनाउँदाखेरि हजुरले के हुन्छ भनेपछि हजुरले एउटा डिफल्ट सिक्युरिटी ग्रुप पाउनुहुन्छ जसमा कि डिफल्ट रुल डिनाई अल हुन्छ इनबाउन्ड रुलको लागि र एलाउ अल आउटबाउन्ड रुल हुन्छ। But it's highly recommended that you not use default security group, हैन। कस्टम आफ्नो रिक्वायरमेन्ट अनुसारको सिक्युरिटी ग्रुप बनाएर काम गर्दा हुन्छ। एन्ड सिक्युरिटी ग्रुप्स आर स्टेटलेस। यो भन्नको मतलब के हो भनेपछि मैले यदि इनबाउन्डमा एउटा पट खोले, पट 80 ओपन टु अल द इन्टरनेट भनेपछि मैले आउटबाउन्डमा चाहिँ सेम रुल ओपन गर्नु पर्दैन। इनबाउन्डमा डिफाइन गरे हुन्छ बिकज इट क्यारीज आउट द स्टेट। अथवा आउटबाउन्डमा मैले कुनै पोर्ट ओपन गरे भनेपछि सिमिलर टाइपको पोर्ट मैले इनबाउन्डमा ओपन गर्नु पर्दैन। इट अटोमेटिकली आइडेन्टिफाइज दैट इनबाउन्डमा ओपन छ भने आउटबाउन्डमा पनि ओपन गर्नुपर्छ र आउटबाउन्डमा ओपन छ भनेपछि इनबाउन्डमा पनि ओपन गर्नुपर्छ। सो यु क्यान क्रिएट कस्टम सिक्युरिटी ग्रुप्स। सो स्पेसिफाई एलाउ रुल्स बट नट डिनाई रुल्स। सो डिनाई रुलहरु यसमा हुँदैन, एलाउ रुल मात्रै हुन्छ। So for one example can be source 0.0.0/0, protocol can be TCP र port range भनेको port, and then म यदि तल गयो भनेपछि there is security को section मा network ACL and security group छ। So network ACL ओपन गर्छु म, and let me create a new network ACL, name it demo test NACL. We need to select the VPC where to apply this NACL, right? And then we'll simply create the NACL. Here NACL create this one, my school vitra jansu, and now you can see I can define inbound rules by default denies her, outbound rule by default denies her. Now I can start adding inbound and outbound rules. Now one rule can be add new rule. We can name it 100. Let's open port HTTP 80, right? Let's open to all. We can allow or deny that rule and then add new rule. Let's give it 50. So 50 will be evaluated first and then 100 and then the asterisk one. Let's give it a custom port 8080 and then let's deny that. So it changes. अब यो त हामीले गर्यौं, अब आउटबाउन्डमा पनि हामीले त्यही रुलहरु यता एलाउ गर्नुपर्ने हुन्छ। So this is NACL. And then there is security groups. Security group मैले एउटा नयाँ क्रिएट गर्छु। Again, let's name it demo test SC. We have to give it a description and then कुन VPC मा अट्याच गर्ने यसलाई, यो VPC हाम्रो, and you can see by default the inbound rules are disabled or there are no inbound rules. हामीले add गर्छौं। Let's add port 80. Apply to anywhere, and then if you save changes, if you create a security group, मैले outbound मा चाहिँ त्यो define गर्नु परेन, right? So यसरी चाहिँ हामीले security group and then NACL चाहिँ बनाउन सक्छौं। अब NACL को केसमा हामीले हेर्यौं भनेपछि we can, अब यो security group चाहिँ हामीले EC2 बनाउँदाखेरि एसोसिएट गर्छौं। हिजो पनि हजुरले डेमोमा हेर्नु भयो होला, हैन? This is applied on the server level, whereas NACL is applied on the subnet level. So यो रुल जुन मैले डेमो टेस्ट NACL मा लाए इनबाउन्ड र आउटबाउन्ड, यो कुन सबनेट मा एसोसिएट गर्ने त भनेर edit subnet association and then let's associate with private subnets. So now any resources that are created in the private subnet, the NACL rules will be evaluated, and if the request is valid based on these rules, it will be allowed it to move ahead, and then it will go to security group. The security group le pani allow gare bhane ani balla the request will reach to the server. So there is a multi-layer of security defined here. So हजुरले यो दुईटा कुरा मजाले युज गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ, right? Okay, so Section 4 was completed, which is about VPC security. Any questions in this part? So there is a question. So if I have to use MySQL DB in RDS in application running in EC2, I have to allow its part in both security group and NACL. Yeah. So especially in security group, NACL is an optional thing. NACL चाहिँ युजै गर्नुपर्छ भन्ने चाहिँ छैन हैन, but it's highly recommended that you implement NACL rules at the subnet level also. But NACL लाई हजुरले इग्नोर गरेर security group मात्रै युज गर्छु भन्नुभयो भने पनि that is also possible. But it's highly recommended that you use both of those for higher security. Any questions? Anyone further? VPC security ma RDS को DB को IP हुन्छ हो छुट्टै या IP भन्दा नि so if अब RDS अथवा डेटाबेस पनि AWS मा बनाउनलाई just a minute. So AWS मा RDS बनाउनलाई पनि there are two ways, right? Let me tell you. So for example, मेरो requirement हो MySQL database create गर्ने. I have two options. One is I'll create an EC2 instance and install MySQL and configure it, right? Arko option I'll use AWS RDS, which is a managed DB service from AWS. So AWS ले हजुरलाई DB related को सबै कुराहरु आफै म्यानेज गरेर दिन्छ. So you don't have to worry about patching, you don't have to worry about server updates of that database, right? So त्यो युज गर्नुहुन्छ. अब RDS हजुरले युज गर्नुभयो भने you get a endpoint. हैन, it's like a domain name. You get an endpoint. Of course त्यो endpoint को backend मा चाहिँ IPs हरु हुन्छ र EC2 instance हजुरले गर्नुभयो भने you will get private IP address if it's a private EC2 instance, right? So there are two ways you can install and configure databases on the AWS. Okay, aru ke questions? Otherwise I'll move ahead. We have very less time and too much of things to learn. Okay, so ma agadi badchu hai. So हजुरहरुलाई बीचमा के question आयो भने you guys can like type in the chats. Now let's move ahead. So there is a lab, right? एकदमै राम्रो ल्याब छ यो हजुरहरुले गर्नुस्. एकचोटी गर्नुस्, दुईचोटी गर्नुस्, तीनचोटी गर्नुस्, 10 चोटी गर्नुस्. Until and unless you are much and more clear about the concepts, how things work, you can do the labs multiple times. There is no time limit अथवा त्यस्तो restrictions चाहिँ हजुरहरुको कोर्समा छैन. Right? You do that. Now we'll move ahead with section 5, which is about Amazon Route 53. So Amazon Route 53 is a highly available and scalable DNS web service. हजुरले GoDaddy को कति जनाले नाम सुन्नु भएको छ? GoDaddy, Namecheap, and other domain name providers, right? Yep. Question सोध्नु पर्ने हो अधिवेश. You guys have raised a hand कि just मैले question सोधेकोमा answer दिन खोज्नुमा हजुरहरुले. So raise your hand. So when you want to ask questions only, है त अथवा chat मा हजुरले उ गर्दा हुन्छ. So yeah, I got that. So yeah, exactly. GoDaddy जस्तै AWS Route 53 पनि AWS कै DNS web service हो, where you can purchase domains, you can configure DNS records, right? And you can perform a lot of advanced things related with DNS. So it's a AWS service that is related with DNS. It's called Amazon Route 53. So it is used to route end users to internet applications by translating names like www.example.com into numerical IP addresses like 192.0.2.1 that computers use to connect with each other. It's fully compliant with IPv4 and IPv6, and it is used to check health of your resources. I know different routing policies are Amazon Route 53 ma cha. It enables you to register domain names as well. So it's a fully packed DNS service provided by AWS. Now, मैले हजुरहरुलाई भन्नु चाहिँ पर्दैन होला how DNS resolution works on the internet. How, if you type google.com कसरी खुल्यो हैन, because in the background there is of course some sort of IP of the servers. google.com हान्ने बित्तिकै यो चाहिँ IP मा convert भयो, and then the IP address was of a specific server of Google where google.com is hosted, right? So डोमेन नेमले के गर्यो भनेपछि यो नाम हामीलाई सजिलो बनाइदियो, हामीलाई याद गर्न सजिलो भयो नि हैन। जस्तै सस्तो tickets.com अथवा novelbank.com हान्ने बित्तिकै पेजेसहरु खुल्छ, but in the background there are IP address associated with that domain names. So यो domain name लाई workable बनाउन, configure गर्न हैन, multiple records हरु add गर्नलाई कसले help गर्छ? DNS systems like GoDaddy and Cloudflare and other things. And for AWS, it's AWS Route 53. So there is an example, www.example.com. हैन, यो हान्ने बित्तिकै यसले चाहिँ DNS resolver through checks with the AWS Route 53 for the IP address, and Route 53 returns the IP address that is associated with this domain, and then it returns the IP to the user under which this domain is working. It's similar to हजुरले चाहिँ साथीहरुको फोन नम्बर सेभ गर्नुहुन्छ हैन। अब the only phone number that I know is of my dad, हैन। अरु कसैको मलाई फोन नम्बरहरु याद छैन, but मलाई नामहरु याद छ। म मेरो मोबाइल फोन खोल्छु, I just type friend's name and then I just click on call button and then I get in a call with friends. मलाई फोन नम्बरहरु याद गर्नु परेन, but नामहरु सजिलो याद गर्न भएर, because humans are not that good with numbers, right, from the beginning. So त्यसको सजिलोको लागि DNS resolution thing is there on the internet, right, and we can go ahead and configure things accordingly. So now Amazon Route 53 ले हामीलाई डोमेन किन्ने र डोमेन कन्फिगर गर्ने मात्रै क्यापेबिलिटी दिन्न, यसले हामीलाई डिफरेंट राउटिङ पोलिसीजहरु पनि प्रोवाइड गर्छ, how the traffic should be routed to the service. The first one with routing policies, right? So first routing policy is simple routing, जसमा कि हामीले एरर कोडहरु एड गर्छौं and then things start working. हामीले weighted round robin routing policy पनि छ, जसमा कि हामीले मसँग दुईटा सर्भर छ अनि एउटा सर्भरमा मैले के कन्फिगर गरेको छु भनेपछि 80% ट्राफिक चाहिँ आयो भने चाहिँ सर्भर ए मा रिडाइरेक्ट होस्ट रिक्वेस्ट हैन, अनि त्यसपछि 30% ट्राफिक आयो भनेपछि अथवा 20% ट्राफिक आयो भनेपछि सर्भर बी मा गएर त्यो रिक्वेस्ट डाइरेक्ट होस्ट भनेर त्यो वेट पनि दिएर हामीले रिक्वेस्टलाई रिडाइरेक्ट गर्न सक्छौं। Another one is latency routing policy. So latency routing policy मा के हुन्छ भनेपछि एउटा सर्भर मैले नेपालमा राखेको छु अनि एउटा सर्भर मैले सिंगापुरमा राखेको छु। अब सिंगापुरमा भएको मान्छेले मेरो वेबसाइट एक्सेस गर्न खोज्यो भने त्यसको रिक्वेस्ट कहाँ जाने भयो? सिंगापुरमा होस्ट भएको सर्भरमा जाने भयो। र नेपालमा एक्सेस गर्न खोज्यो कसैले त्यो वेबसाइट भनेपछि त्यो रिक्वेस्ट कहाँ जाने भयो? कुन सर्भरमा? नेपालमा रहेको सर्भरमा। So latency based routing हामीले युज गर्यो भनेपछि it automatically identifies मेरो नजिकको सर्भर कहाँ छ भनेर, and based on that the latency is decreased. So it helps you for global applications. Geolocation, so हामीले लोकेसन वाइज पनि हामीले डिफाइन गर्न सक्छौं कि नेपालबाट कुनै युजरले एक्सेस गर्न खोज्यो भने त्यसको रिक्वेस्ट चाहिँ इन्डियाको सर्भरमा रिडाइरेक्ट गर्दै, युएस बाट कसैले रिक्वेस्ट गर्यो भने त्यसको रिक्वेस्ट चाहिँ सिंगापुरको सर्भरमा रिडाइरेक्ट गर्दै भनेर जियो लोकेसन राउटिङ पोलिसी पनि हामीले राउट 53 मा डिफाइन गर्न सक्छौं, राइट। अर्को छ जियो प्रोक्सिमिटी राउटिङ। नाउ दिस इज भेरी एडभान्स थिङ हैन। सो यसमा के हुन्छ भनेपछि म ओल्ड म्याप खोल्छु है त। ओल्ड म्याप, सो यो मैले ओल्ड म्याप भयो है त। अब यो ओल्ड म्यापमा मैले के गर्छु, एउटा धर्का तान्छु है त। यो बिचमा चाहिँ एउटा धर्का तान्छु। सो दिस वन एउटा धर्का तान्दिन्छु, जस्ट अ मिनेट। सो यसरी चाहिँ मैले एउटा धर्का तान्दे। अब मसँग दुईटा सर्भर छ। सो मेरो रिक्वायरमेन्ट के हो भनेपछि विश्वको यो पार्टको मान्छेले चाहिँ रिक्वेस्ट मेरो वेबसाइटलाई गरिरहेछन् भनेपछि तिनीहरूलाई सर्भर ए मा पठा, अनि यता पार्टको मान्छेले मेरो वेबसाइटलाई अथवा मेरो डोमेनलाई एक्सेस गरिरहेछन् भनेपछि तिनीहरूलाई सर्भर 2 अथवा सर्भर 3 मा पठा भनेर त्यति सम्मको पनि हामीले राउटिङ पोलिसी डिफाइन गर्न सक्छौं। एन्ड दैट इज पोसिबल युजिङ जियो प्रोक्सिमिटी राउटिङ। Another one is failover routing, जहाँनिर हामीले प्राइमेरी र सेकेन्डरी राउटिङको कन्सेप्ट हुन्छ. सो देयर इज अ प्राइमेरी सर्भर, देयर इज अ सेकेन्डरी सर्भर. र प्राइमेरी सर्भरमा केही प्रब्लम आउने बित्तिकै यो रिक्वेस्ट विल बी रिडाइरेक्टेड अटोमेटिकली टु द सेकेन्डरी सर्भर विच इज होस्टेड इन अनदर रिजन हैन, अथवा अनदर अभाइलेबिलिटी जोन. सो त्यो पनि हामीले गर्न सकिन्छ. द लास्ट वान इज मल्टी भ्यालु एन्सर राउटिङ. सो हजुरको डोमेनको नाम www.example.com हो र त्यसको कन्टेन्ट हजुरले 10 वटा सर्भरमा राख्नु भएको छ रे हैन. सो www.example.com कसैले विश्वको एउटा इन्डबाट हिट गर्यो ब्राउजरमा भनेपछि त्यो 10 वटा मध्ये कुनै न कुनै एउटा सर्भरले त्यो रेस्पोन्ड गर्छ. अब यो कुन बेला काम लाग्छ भनेपछि हजुरको 10 वटा सर्भरमा 8 वटा सर्भर चाहिँ डाउन भयो र केही कारणवशले, तर स्टिल हजुरको 2 टा सर्भर त एभाइलेबल छन् 10 वटा मध्ये भनेपछि मल्टी भ्यालु एन्सर राउटिङले स्टिल त्यो 2 वटा सर्भरलाई रिच गरेर हजुरको युजरहरूलाई रिक्वेस्टको रेस्पोन्स पठाउँछ. सो इफ यु हेभ द्याट रिक्वायरमेन्ट यु क्यान युज मल्टी भ्यालु एन्सर राउटिङ. सो दिज आर भेरी भेरी युजफुल राउटिङ पोलिसिज बेस्ड अन योर रिक्वायरमेन्ट. यु क्यान गो अहेड एन्ड युज, राइट. सो अघि नै मैले भने जस्तै दिस इज द इक्जाम्पल अफ मल्टी रिजन डिप्लोयमेन्ट. सो यहाँनिर हेर्नु हो भने यो चाहिँ हाम्रो फेल ओभर राउटिङको पोलिसीको इक्जाम्पल हो. सो example.com छ, सेम डोमेन example.com छ. दिस इज द प्राइमेरी डोमेन, दिस इज द सेकेन्डरी डोमेन. सो हामीले एउटा युजर छ हैन, अब त्यो युजरलाई चाहिँ ल्याटेन्सी बेसमा पनि हामीले गर्न सक्यौँ. जस्तै एउटा रिजनमा एउटा एप्लिकेसन एउटा रिजनमा छ, अर्को रिजनमा नि छ. अब इफ इट्स ल्याटेन्सी बेस देन नजिक, अब युजरको नजिक त यो छ, यो वाला लोड ब्यालेन्सरको लोगो हजुरले हेरिराख्नु भएको छ भनेपछि रिक्वेस्ट यहाँ जानेको पहिला हैन, किनभने नजिक छ अनि नजिक भएपछि अफ कोर्स ल्याटेन्सी इज गोइङ टु बी लेस हैन. इट्स सिमिलर टु मलाई यहाँबाट चाहिँ म अहिले नेपालगञ्जमा छु, नेपालगञ्जबाट चाहिँ कुनै नजिकको लोकेसन जानु पर्यो भनेपछि वाट इज द बेस्ट पाथ द्याट आई विल चुज, त्यो हामीले यसरी चाहिँ डिफाइन गर्न सक्छौँ. अनि मल्टी रिजन डिप्लोयमेन्टको फाइदा पनि के हो भनेपछि एउटा रिजन डाउन भयो भने स्टिल वी हेभ आवर रिसोर्सेस एक्सेसेबल फ्रम एनदर रिजन. सो मल्टी रिजन डिप्लोयमेन्ट पनि यसले सपोर्ट गर्छ राउट 53 राउटिङ पोलिसीहरूले. अर्को example, Amazon Route 53 DNS failover, and this is the scenario where you define primary server and a secondary server. So primary server ma ke hune bittikai the request is transferred to the secondary server. So improve the availability of your application that run on AWS by configuring backup and failover scenarios for your application, enabling high available multi-region architecture on AWS and creating health checks. र AWS Route 53 मा कसरी थाहा पाउँछ AWS Route 53 ले कि मेरो प्राइमेरी डाउन छ भनेर, त्यसको लागि हामीले हेल्थ चेक्सहरु सेटअप गर्नुपर्छ. अब यहाँनिर यो इमेज हजुरले हेर्नुभयो भने रिक्वेस्ट इन्टरभल 30 सेकेन्ड्समा 30 सेकेन्ड्समा यसले चेक गर्छ कि त्यो प्राइमेरी चाहिँ डाउन छ कि छैन, एभ्रिथिङ इज वर्किङ पर्फेक्टली अर नट. एन्ड इफ इट सेन्सेस इन 30 मिनट दैट द प्राइमेरी इज डाउन देन द फेलोभर मेकानिजम स्टार्ट्स अटोमेटिकली र अब आउने रिक्वेस्टहरु प्राइमेरीबाट हजुरको सेकेन्डरीमा मुभ हुन थाल्छ. सो यु क्यान युज Amazon Route 53 DNS failover routing for that. सो अघि नै मैले भने जस्तै त्यही कुरा होइन. सो प्राइमेरी चाहिँ एउटा रिजनमा छ and secondary is in another region. The secondary is hosted on Amazon S3, the primary is hosted on EC2 instances हैन, ब्याकएन्ड मा डेटाबेसेसहरु नि छ र प्राइमेरीमा केही प्रब्लम आउने बित्तिकै अबको रिक्वेस्ट के हुन्छ सेकेन्डरी थ्रु चाहिँ होस्ट हुन थाल्छ, सेकेन्डरी थ्रु चाहिँ सर्भ हुन थाल्छ. सो त्यही कुरा नै छ DNS failover फर मल्टी टियर्ड वेब एप्लिकेसन पनि हामीले राउट 53 युज गरेर इनेबल गर्न सक्छौं. So Route 53 is a highly available and scalable cloud DNS web service that translates domain name into numeric IP address. And Amazon Route 53 supports several types of routing policies. So it also supports multi-region deployments to improve your application performance for global audience. You can use Amazon Route 53 failover to improve the availability of your application. Kasari? प्राइमेरी डाउन भयो भनेपछि रिक्वेस्ट अटोमेटिकली सेकेन्डरीमा जाने भयो अटोमेटिकल्ली हैन भनेपछि देयर इज द कन्सेप्ट अफ अटोमेटेड फेल ओभर हैन सो हाम्रो एप्लिकेसनको अभाइलेबिलिटी हाई हुने भयो र मेरो कस्टमर इम्प्याक्टेड पनि हुने भएन कस्टमरलाई थाहै हुन्न कि म सेकेन्डरीबाट सर्भ भइरहेको छु कि प्राइमेरीबाट हैन द थिङ्स ह्यापन इन द ब्याकग्राउन्ड त्यही भएर Amazon Route 53 is a very powerful DNS service of AWS. Any questions on the Route 53 part? Is failover routing work like RAD 2.3 in physical server? I'm not sure about that. I have to look into that part. I'm not sure how that RAD thing works. But failover routing ko very actually simple tarika le I'll go with this image only. This one. So users Route 53 हामीले युज गरेका छौं but there is failover routing. So primary चाहिँ हाम्रो AWS Cloud मै छ हैन सेकेन्डरी पनि त्यही कन्टेन्टको लोवर भर्जन चाहिँ हामीले S3 मा राखेका छौं अब रिक्वेस्ट चाहिँ प्राइमेरीमा गइरा छ अहिलेलाई हैन मजाले प्राइमेरीमा गइरा छ and then what happens is यहाँनिर प्रब्लम आइदियो रे प्राइमेरीमा now the request flows to from user to Route 53 and to the Amazon S3 automatically and this is using failover routing अब यसको बेनिफिट के पनि हो भनेपछि ल 2 घण्टा पछि मेरो प्राइमेरी फेरि अप आयो रे भनेपछि यसले अटोमेटिकली सेन्स गर्छ Route 53 ले के ओके प्राइमेरी अप आइसक्यो है भनेपछि अब मैले सेकेन्डरीबाट फेरि रिक्वेस्ट प्राइमेरीमा मुभ गर्नुपर्छ भनेर and then what happens is it stops sending traffic let me check where to raise it from so it automatically senses that and then it stops sending traffic to secondary and it starts sending traffic again from user to the primary and then to the primary server so automatically that failover thing happens but let me copy this question and I can get back with you either so let me paste that question somewhere okay aru kasaiको key questions sir how round robin algorithm works I mean wait load balancing thing त्यसको लागि के let me give you another example come on let me open another tool draw.io okay this one so this is server 1 this is server 2 so अब मैले के गर्छु भनेपछि I'll use Route 53 weighted routing policy right र यहाँनिर मैले के डिफाइन गर्छु भनेपछि this is the user र यहाँनिर मैले के रुल डिफाइन गर्छु भनेपछि rule is if TRA traffic अथवा simple send 70% traffic to server 1 and 40% traffic to server 2. So user request route 53 मा जान्छ. route 53 मा यो rule हेर्ने बित्तिकै त्यसले यो rule analyze गर्छ हैन. And the rule says that okay, if 70% of traffic is there, then I need to send that request to server 1, and if it's 40%, then I need to send it to server 2. Maybe the condition can be server 2 को spec सानो छ हैन, server 1 को ठुलो छ. It might be 4 कोर को CPU 16 GB RAM, where server 2 is 2 कोर को CPU 4 GB RAM हैन. अथवा सर्भर 1 मा चाहिँ भर्जन 1 लेटेस्ट भर्जन चलिरहेछ अनि सर्भर 2 मा चाहिँ पुरानो भर्जन चलिरहेछ. So instead of sending the whole traffic to this newer version, I want that 80% or 70% traffic चाहिँ पहिला भर्जन 1 मा जाओस् र कुनै प्रब्लम आएन भनेपछि अनि बल्ल चाहिँ म अरु ट्राफिकहरु त्यहाँ पठाउँछु भनेर त्यो युज केसको लागि पनि हामीले वेटेड राउन्ड रबिन पोलिसी युज गर्न सक्छौं, राइट? So त्यो युज केसेसहरुको लागि युज. So the use case is too simple. If I go ahead and show you guys, let me show you. Route 53 मा जान्छु म. Route 53, right? Route 53 मा गएपछि मसँग 6 वटा डोमेन छ. Himal Pets, OneCloud Helper, thapai.com, womeninAWS.com, and these are my personal domains. हैन. अब म राउटिङ पोलिसी बनाउनलाई let's go to onecloudhelper.com. And then I'll click on create record. Let's name it demo.onecloudhelper. र यहाँनिर हेर्नु भने राउटिङ पोलिसी छ. अब यहाँनिर कुन राउटिङ पोलिसी चुज गर्ने? वेटेड, जियो लोकेसन, ल्याटेन्सी, फेलोगर, मल्टी भ्यालु, आईपी बेस्ड पनि रहेछ. सरी, जियो प्रोक्सिमिटी. सो वेटेड राउट रबिन. अब यहाँनिर हेर्नु भने कति वेट पठाउने मैले हैन. Maybe the weight of each record has the same name, so maybe the weight can be between number 0 to 255. So let me say 200 and add another, and then same domain name, and the remaining one can be I can give it 255 भनेपछि let's give it 100 हैन. सो यो चाहिँ कहाँ पठाउने भनेर त्यसको भ्यालु चाहिँ हामीले यहाँनिर राख्न सक्छौं. न दिस भ्यालु क्यान बी पब्लिक आईपी एड्रेस अफ अ सर्भर, राइट? सो त्यसरी चाहिँ हामीले डिफाइन गर्न सक्छौं. So Alan, can Route 53 give 2 domain names for 2 applications running in the same server in different ports? Can Route 53 give 2 domain names for 2 applications running in the same server? Yeah, we can do that. So एउटै सर्भरमा हजुरले मल्टिपल एप्लिकेसन होस्ट गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ. One application can be example.com, another example can be hello.com. हैन. सो hello.com को रिक्वेस्ट पनि सर्टेन पोर्ट हुँदै त्यही सर्भरमा हिट गर्छ. त्यो कन्टेन्ट हजुरको एउटा लोकेसनमा राख्नु भएको छ, एन्ड देन example.com हान्नु भयो भनेपछि स्टिल इट गोज टु द सेम सर्भर, बट दैट कन्टेन्ट इज होस्टेड समवेयर एल्स इन द सम डिफरेंट पाथ इन द सेम सर्भर. सो दैट इज पोसिबल. एनी अदर क्वेशन गाइज? I'm making you guys clear, right? So question चाहिँ यो राउन्ड रबिन वेटेड वालाको रवि विष्णुको थियो. So रवि विष्णु, are you clear on that part? Okay, awesome. Ellen को queries clear भयो. So मैले बुझाउँदाखेरि if you guys बुझिन्न हैन भनेपछि you guys can tell me. So म अरु तरिकाले पनि हजुरहरुलाई बुझाउँछु. Ellen लाई okay, awesome. अब हामी अगाडि बढौं हैन. So we talked about this. So एकदमै रमाइलो सर्भिस हो AWS Route 53. When you work in the real world, AWS Route 53 हजुरले धेरैचोटि युज गर्नुहुन्छ for designing a highly available solution for different A/B testingsहरु हैन. त्यो सबैको लागि हामीले Route 53 युज गर्छौं. So अहिलेलाई यति हजुरले जानिराख्नु भयो भने हजुरले फर्दर गएर यसको बारेमा रिसर्च गर्नुस्, टेस्टहरु गर्नुस् हैन हजुरको स्यान्डबक्स अकाउन्टमा, and then you will be more aware about these things. अब हाम्रो लास्ट सेक्सन छ Amazon CloudFront, which is a content delivery network solution of AWS. So अहिलेसम्म हामीले नेटवर्किङ हेर्यौं. अब चाहिँ हाम्रो लास्ट सेक्सन इज अबाउट कन्टेन्ट डेलिभरी. So content delivery and network latencies are associated with each other, हैन? जस्तै यो इमेजमा हजुरले हेर्नुभयो भने देयर इज अ युजर, त्यो युजर मेबी युएस होला हैन, अनि सर्भर चाहिँ हजुरको इन्डियामा होस्टेड छ। अब त्यो युजरले www.example.com भनेर हान्यो भनेपछि या त फाइबर अप्टिक्स केबल हुनु पर्यो डाइरेक्ट कनेक्ट युज गरेर हैन, सो दैट त्यो रिक्वेस्ट यति फास्ट जाओस् त्यो ओरिजिन सर्भरसम्म, किनभने फाइबर अप्टिक्समा त त्यो जान्छ, किनभने देयर इज नो एनी सर्ट अफ डिस्टर्बेन्स इन द वे। तर पब्लिक इन्टरनेट युज गरेर गयो भने इट गोज थ्रु द राउटर। सो अहिले मैले google.com हाने भने यो कहाँ जान्छ भनेपछि मेरो घरको राउटर हुँदै अब इन्डियाको राउटर होला अथवा गुगल सर्भरको राउटरसँग रिच गर्नले बिचमा अरु राउटर्सहरु होला, मल्टिपल हब्सहरु लिएर मेरो रिक्वेस्ट जानुपर्छ र बिचमा चाहिँ कहिले कहिले चाहिँ गुगल स्लो लोड हुने हैन, ढिलो लोड हुने त्यो कारणहरु पनि हुन सक्छन् हैन। बट अहिलेलाई मेरो लागि त त्यो ठुलो प्रब्लम भएन, गुगल 3 सेकेन्ड 10 सेकेन्ड ढिलो खुल्यो भने त मेरो लागि प्रब्लम भएन। बट फर द अर्गनाइजेसन लाइक ई-कमर्स साइट र ठुलो अर्गनाइजेसनको लागि त 2 सेकेन्ड 3 सेकेन्डको ल्याटेन्सी अथवा डिले पनि एकदमै ठुलो कुरा हुन जान्छ। दे वान्ट टु गिभ द कस्टमर द बेस्ट एक्सपिरियन्स, राइट? सो त्यसको लागि हामीले के युज गर्न सक्छौं? इफ वी वान्ट टु decrease this latency in between, हजुरले हेर्नुभयो भने राउटर, त्यसपछि यहाँ हब छ, त्यहाँबाट फेरि राउटर, हब गरेर फेरि अर्को राउटरमा गएछ, फेरि अर्को राउटरमा गएछ, अनि बल्ल ओरिजिन सर्भरसम्म पुगेछ। अब फेरि त्यही क्लाइन्टले अर्को रिक्वेस्ट पनि पठायो भने फेरि त्यही प्रोसेस हुँदै ओरिजिन सर्भरसम्म जान्छ, फेरि त्यही प्रोसेस दोहोरिरहन्छ हैन। अब कन्टेन्ट डेलिभरीको कन्सेप्ट के हो? हामीले बीचमा के गर्छौं, सानो सानो सर्भरहरु राख्दिन्छौं जसमा कि यो क्लाइन्टको डेटा केस भएर बसोस्, राइट? नाउ एक्जाम्पल क्यान बी, सो मैले एउटा सानो डेटा सेन्टर यहाँ बनाइदिए, एउटा सानो डेटा सेन्टर यहाँ बनाइदिए, एउटा डेटा सेन्टर यहाँ बनाइदिए है त, अनि एउटा यहाँ यो भनेको मेरो युजर भयो। लेट मी अर्को कलर चुज गर्छु, यो चाहिँ सरी come on, okay, so यो भनेको मेरो सरी यो मेरो युजर भयो हैन। so let me text this is user हैन। अब के हुन्छ भनेपछि यो क्लाइन्टले चाहिँ यो युजरले चाहिँ क्लाइन्ट डिभाइस युज गरेर कुनै कुरा ओरिजिन सर्भरबाट एउटा इमेज चाहिँ तान्यो रे, एउटा बिरालोको इमेज चाहिँ तान्यो रे ओरिजिन सर्भरबाट। अब त्यो इमेज क्याटको इमेज हजुरको जति पनि सानो सानो डेटा सेन्टर्सहरु छन्, सानो सानो डेटा सेन्टरमा त्यो बिरालोको इमेज केस भएर बस्छ। So the second time the user accesses the same cat's picture, instead of that request going to the origin server, नजिकको केस लोकेसनमा पहिला त्यसले सर्च गर्छ। अब केस लोकेसनमा त पहिल्यै बसेको छ त्यो क्याटको पिक्चर भनेपछि द रिक्वेस्ट डजन्ट नीड्स टु गो टु द ओरिजिन सर्भर, नजिकको केस सर्भरबाट त्यो इमेज तान्छ र युजरलाई त्यो क्याटको इमेज भिजिबल हुन्छ। सेकेन्ड युजर आएर पनि त्यही क्याटको पिक्चर एक्सेस गर्न खोज्यो भने अगेन दैट रिक्वेस्ट विल फर्स्ट गो टु द नियरेस्ट एज लोकेसन, जसलाई हामीले केस सेन्टर नि भन्छौं, अनि त्यहाँ इमेज पिक्चरको छ भनेपछि क्याटको त्यहीबाट फेरि क्लाइन्टलाई एक्सेस हुने भयो। अब इमेजिन गर्नु त त्यो युजरको रिक्वेस्ट नजिकको केस लोकेसनबाट एज अ रेस्पोन्स आउनु र त्यो रिक्वेस्ट ओरिजिन सर्भरमा गएर अनि बल्ल चाहिँ रिक्वेस्ट फेरि क्लाइन्टकोमा जानु एज अ रेस्पोन्स, कतिको डिफरेन्स छ। नाउ टु मेक दैट रिक्वेस्ट टु ओरिजिन सर्भर इट माइट टेक लाइक 5 सेकेन्ड्स भनेपछि अब चाहिँ 2 सेकेन्ड्समै त्यो डेटा युजर्सहरुको नजिक जाने भयो, राइट? अब यो युजरले पनि सेम क्याटको पिक्चर एक्सेस गर्न खोज्यो भनेपछि त्यो रिक्वेस्ट चाहिँ यहाँ नजिकको डेटा सेन्टर आई मिन एज लोकेसनमा गएर एक्सेस हुन सक्यो। नाउ दैट ह्यापन्स अटोमेटिकली, हामीले केही कन्फिगर गर्नु पर्दैन, जस्ट हामीले AWS को एउटा सर्भिस युज गर्छौं व्हिच इज क्लाउड फ्रन्ट, एन्ड देन the content delivery thing, and the content delivery magic happens automatically. Isn't that beautiful, right? So if it's your requirement to decrease that network latency and increase the performance efficiency of your application, then you can go ahead and use content delivery network, right? So, ma agadi badchu. So, content delivery network is a globally distributed system of caching servers. मैले भनेको थिएँ नि हैन, globally distributed system of caching servers, caches copies of commonly requested files. जुन commonly requested फाइल्सहरु हुन्छन् त्यो फाइल्सहरुलाई त्यसले केसिङ सर्भर्सहरुमा स्टोर गरेर राखेको हुन्छ स्पेसिफिक अमाउन्ट अफ टाइमको लागि. Deliver a local copy of your requested content from a nearly cache edge or point of presence, accelerates delivery of dynamic content and improves application performance and scaling. र यो कन्टेन्ट डेलिभरीको लागि AWS मा एउटा सर्भिस छ, त्यो सर्भिसको नाम हो Amazon Cloud Front. It's fast, global and secure CDN service. Global network of edge locations. यो edge location भनेको मैले अघि नै जुन हजुरलाई पिक्चरमा सानो सानो डेटा सेन्टर बनाएर भनेको थिएँ नि, त्यसलाई हामीले AWS को ल्याङ्ग्वेजमा edge locations भन्छ. And regional edge cases. Regional edge cases पनि edge locationsहरु नै हो, तर यो चाहिँ हजुरको केसेसहरु अथवा जुन केसिङ हुन्छ, जुन चाहिँ हजुरको अनपपुलर डेटाहरु हुन्छ, त्यो अनपपुलर डेटालाई चाहिँ रिजनल एज केसमा राखिन्छ र जुन पपुलर डेटा जुन फ्रिक्वेन्टली एक्सेस भइरहेको हुन्छ त्यसलाई चाहिँ एज लोकेसनमा राखिन्छ. इट्स अ सेल्फ सर्भिस मोडल, सो यु क्यान कन्फिगर क्लाउड फ्रन्ट कि कुन टाइपको डेटालाई केस गर्ने, कुन टाइपको डेटालाई केस नगर्ने, कुन बेला केसलाई चाहिँ क्लियर गर्ने हैन, किनभने केसमा पुरानो डेटा बसिरह्यो, नयाँ डेटा सर्भरमा अपडेट भइसक्यो, क्लाइन्टले अहिले पनि पुरानै डेटा एक्सेस गरिरहेछ भने त त्यो पनि फाइदा भएन हैन. सो कुन बेला केस क्लियर गर्ने, कुन बेला नयाँ केसहरु अपडेट गर्ने, त्यो सबै कुराहरु हामीले कन्फिगर गर्न सक्छौं. एन्ड इट्स पे एज यु गो प्राइसिङ मोडल. सो क्लाउड फ्रन्टको केसबाट जति डेटा एज अ रेस्पोन्स आउट भयो त्यति नै हामीलाई मात्रै पैसा पर्न जान्छ. सो यो वर्ल्डको म्याप हेर्नुभयो भने यो सानो सानो जुन थोप्लोहरु छ, दिस रिप्रेजेन्ट्स एज लोकेशन्स इन ब्लू कलर. पर्पल वालालाई मल्टी एज लोकेशन्स भनिन्छ. यु क्यान सी अ लट अफ आर देयर ओभर द वर्ल्ड. एन्ड पर्पल वालालाई मल्टिपल एज लोकेशन्स भनिन्छ. एन्ड this one is regional edge cases. So edge locations are network of data centers that CloudFront uses to serve popular content quickly to customers. And regional edge cases are locations that case content that is not popular enough to stay at the edge location. So unpopular content are like regional edge case ma rakhincha ra edge locations bitra popular content are rakhincha. Ra यसको working mechanism के हो? The user request first goes to the edge location and then goes to the regional edge case. And if the data is not found anywhere, and then बल्ल त्यो चाहिँ origin server मा hit भएर हजुरको data fetch हुन्छ. So Amazon CloudFront benefits it fast and global. अब imagine गर्नु हजुरले CloudFront बनाउने बित्तिकै हजुरको data center जुन विश्वको इन्डमा भए पनि हजुरको data चाहिँ विश्वभरि नै केस भएर बस्छ. साउथ अफ्रिकामा नि, युएसमा नि, इन्डियामा नि हैन, सिंगापुरमा नि, इच एन्ड एभ्री लोकेशन्सहरुमा हजुरको डेटा गएर बस्दिन्छ. सो अब युएसमा भएको युजरले हजुरको कन्टेन्टलाई एक्सेस गर्न खोज्यो भनेपछि हजुरमा इन्डियामा होस्ट भएको सर्भरमा आउनुको सट्टा युएसमै भएको सानो एज लोकेसनमा त्यसले पहिला खोज्छ र त्यहाँ भेट्यो भनेपछि त हजुरको ल्याटेन्सी कम हुने भयो, राइट? एन्ड देन द युजर गेट्स your page loaded too fast, and then you get a lot of awesome feedbacks and happy customers. So security at edge. CloudFrontले security पनि किन enable गर्छ भनेपछि अब instead of request directly following to the origin server, पहिला request हजुरको कहाँ गइराछ? CloudFront edge locations-हरुमा गइराछ. र एज लोकेसनकै लेभलमा, क्लाउडफ्रन्टकै लेभलमा हामीले सिक्युरिटी रुल्सहरु डिफाइन गर्न सक्छौं. वी क्यान एप्लाई वेब एप्लिकेसन फायरवाल. सो रिक्वेस्ट हजुरको क्लाउडफ्रन्ट लेभलमा नै स्क्यान हुन्छ before it reaches to the origin server. So if it's a faulty request, then at the CloudFront level only it gets discarded, right? It's highly programmable. अघि नै मैले भनेको थिएँ कुन बेला इन्भ्यालिडेट गर्ने, कुन बेला केस हटाउने हैन, कुन कन्टेन्टलाई केस गर्ने, त्यो सबै हामीले प्रोग्राम गर्न सक्छौं. It's deeply integrated with other AWS services and it's cost effective because it works on pay as you go model. So जति युज गर्नुहुन्छ त्यति मात्रै पे गर्नुपर्छ. If we talk about the pricing, data transfer out charges लाग्छ, HTTP request को charges लाग्छ हजुरलाई, अनि इन्भ्यालिडेसन रिक्वेस्ट भनेको हजुरले जुन केस क्लियर गर्नुहुन्छ त्यसको पनि चार्ज लाग्छ. And then if you want dedicated IP address for your CloudFront, then you have to pay extra $600. Right? अब यो डेडिकेटेड आईपी चाहिँ एकदमै हाई लेभलको युज केसेसमा मात्रै युज हुन्छ. So there are multiple customers who don't need this dedicated IP, but if it's your requirement, you can go ahead and use it. Let me show you one example. ल CloudFront use हजुरले हजुरको कन्टेन्ट हजुरको सर्भर यदि फिजिकल सर्भरमा कतै फिजिकल डेटा सेन्टरमा कतै होस्टेड छ, but still you want to use Amazon CloudFront for that extra casing capability भनेपछि त्यो नि गर्न पाइन्छ. हजुरको कन्टेन्ट हजुरको सर्भर चाहिँ AWS मै हुनुपर्छ भन्ने छैन. If it's hosted on premises, on site, त्यो कन्टेन्टलाई पनि हामीले होस्ट गर्न सक्छौं. One example is Nabil Bank. Nabil Bank uses CloudFront. Let me verify this once. Use गर्छन्, पहिला चाहिँ युज गर्थे हैन. So DNS checker. I'll go ahead with C names. Nabil, oh, computer is C. Come on. Come on. Okay, so these are the IP addresses. Let me copy this IP addresses. Let me show you this first. Sorry. Let me copy one of the IP address. Paste it here. Let me check its PTR. And it says CloudFront. Let me zoom it, right? Let me zoom it. Server. It says cloudfront.net. So Nabil Bank ko server चाहिँ cloud ma. Most probably, as per my knowledge, I don't know. I know the server ma ni huna सक्यो cloud को अथवा physically ni hosted huna सक्यो, but they are using AWS को CloudFront so that their customers get their application accessed within seconds with too less latency and higher performance efficiency, right? So this is one of the example. अब स्ट्याटिक आईपी मैले किन भने भनेपछि अब जस्तै यहाँनिर सरी रेकर्ड अब यहाँनिर हेर्नु भने यो कति धेरै आईपीहरु छ हैन. अब स्ट्याटिक आईपी यो सबै डायनामिक आईपी हो. सो यो दिस आईपीज माइट चेन्ज, राइट? सो इफ यु वान्ट अ डेडिकेटेड आईपी, एउटा स्ट्याटिक आईपी चाहिन्छ हजुरको क्लाउडफ्रन्ट को लागि भनेपछि हजुरले $600 तिरेर एउटा नेभर चेन्जिङ आईपी लिन सक्नुहुन्छ, राइट? So यहाँनिर हेर्नु भने यहाँनिर एउटामा चाहिँ 18239 छ, एउटामा 1871723 to 1996 छ, अर्कोमा फेरि यहाँ 3 बाट सुरु भइराछ. So these all are एउटा फेरि 5 बाट सुरु भइराछ. These are static IP addresses that dynamic IP addresses that keep on changing, and if you need a dedicated IP you have to pay a price. Okay, awesome. So a CDN is a globally distributed system of casing servers that accelerates delivery of content. Amazon CloudFront is a fast CDN service that securely delivers data, video, application, APIs over a global infrastructure with low latency and high transfer speed. Amazon CloudFront offers many benefits. एउटा मेजर भनेको casing for better performance efficiency and network performance and lower latency. Second one is security, and then third one is a lot of other things, right, that you guys can explore further. So any questions on this part, content delivery ko part ma? But CloudFront give us endpoint that we can access in URL. Exactly, but त्यो URL को पछाडी पनि हजुरको IP नै हुन्छ हैन. Let me show you one example. I have a CloudFront So this is a CloudFront distribution, maसँग एउटा छ हैन, and you can see it provides me a distribution domain name. But behind the scene, if I go and use DNS checker and then see its A addresses, you can see there are IP addresses behind this domain name. So it's IPs that make the internet work. यो भनेको हजुरलाई यो चिन्नलाई चाहिँ सजिलो होस् भनेर AWS ले दिइराको हुन्छ. So behind the scene there are IP addresses, and if you need a dynamic static IP address, a stable IP address, you have to pay that price. Okay. Can that endpoint be used in? Yeah, we can use that. Let me show you an example. एकदमै मजाले युज गर्न सकिन्छ. कसरी भनेपछि let me go to Route 53. Let me create a record. Let me name it CloudFront, right? And किनभने that's a DNS name, that's why A record doesn't work. किनभने A record is for IPv4 addresses, 4A are for IPv6, C name is for another domain name or same AWS resources. So if it's a domain name, we can use C name. So त्यसको लागि I'll simply paste that value here, and then I can simply create the record, and then the record is created. You can go over here and see the record is created, right? So now if you type cloudfront.onecloudhelper.com, it will redirect that request to this domain. So instead of remembering DH8VIZ1 and 7QXAR, we can simply use this cute name, cloudfront.onecloudhelper.com. That is easier to remember, and then it will directly redirect the request to this CloudFront. We can do that. Let me delete this for now. Okay, awesome. Hope I answered all the questions. अरु कसैको के questions, के queries? Alan, did I answer your questions? Okay, awesome. हुन्छ, बुझिराख्नु भएको छैन भनेपछि please do let me know. I can take time. Time is not a big, it's a big thing, but हजुरले बुझ्नु नै हुन्न भनेपछि that's of no use, right? So again, आज 1.5 घण्टा हाम्रो फेरि अर्को सेसनमा गयो, but we need to complete this anyhow today. भोलिबाट I will not be available. So this was the end of module 5, where we learned about recognizing basics of networking, describing virtual networking in the cloud with Amazon VPC. We didn't did this level network diagram. I know that you guys can perform that. Design a basic VPC architecture. I'll give you this as a task in a minute. Indicate the steps to build a VPC. We looked into different components of VPC. We also looked into identifying security groups and NACLs and how to implement those at the network level. And then we created our own VPC. I'm the demo my right? And then we identified the fundamentals of Route 53, and we also recognized the benefits of CloudFront and how it helps for better network performance. Now there is a sample exam question. Which AWS networking service enables a company to create a virtual network within AWS? A, B, C, D. What's the answer of this? Kiola. A, B, C, or D. Which AWS networking service enables a company to create a virtual network within AWS? Yeah, it's VPC. Virtual Private Network is a service that is used to enable a company or any company to create a virtual network with AWS. So this was the end of our module 5. मलाई एकजनाले रिमेम्बर चाहिँ गराउनुस् है त, म इन्डमा चाहिँ हजुरहरुलाई यो टास्क दिन्छु. So for now I'll move ahead. कसैले मलाई याद दिलाउनु होला. I need to give a homework for you guys. And so I'll move to the next module, which is module 6, which is about compute. which is about computation. So for that, what we'll do is we'll take a break. हामी 3 minutes को break ले पानी सानी खाएर आम, and then we'll start from 2023. 8:23 मा हामी start गर्छौं. So you guys can take a small break. है त? Okay, सबैजना आइसक्नु भयो? Everyone, जो आइसक्नु भएको छ, you guys can show me a thumbs up like this. Okay, Ellen is there. Rebecca, Saugat. Awesome. Like boring त भएको छैन नि है हजुरहरुलाई? So boring भएको छैन भनेपछि you guys can type 1. अलिक boring भएको छ भनेपछि you guys can type 2. Okay, awesome. Not at all. what? अब त्यसलाई म के भनौं, 1 or 2? Okay, awesome. So you guys can be too frank with me, right? If I'm like म एकदमै fast गइरहेको छु भनेपछि you guys can tell me to a bit slow down, हैन? And if I'm going a bit slow, then you can tell me to fast down. Or if you are not understanding a specific topic that I'm teaching, you can like frankly tell me that मैले चाहिँ त्यो बुझिन, हैन? If you can repeat that or give another example so that I can understand that topic much more easily, because we are focusing on the basics, हैन? So that it's very important to understand the basics. Okay, so I got answers from Saugat and Ellen only. So aru hununcha call ma, or you guys have like opened the call and then like I need answers from all of us. So is it boring? The class that I am taking, is it boring? If it's boring, you can type 2. If it's a bit interesting, मैले बुझिरहेको छु भनेपछि you guys can type 1. Rebecca, the base one. Is Rebecca here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ashutosh, you are with us, right? I do not even know the language you are speaking. Still, I can ask crystal clear. कुन भाषा बोलिरहेको छु म? I do not even know the language you are speaking. मैले बोलेको कस्तो, like it's not clear or कस्तो के भन्न खोजे मैले ठ्याक्कै बुझिन. Okay. Yeah, maybe I can use more English words then, right? Fine, awesome. Okay, so ma suru garchu है त. So entire screen, built-in display, and then I can see my screen. So let's start our compute section. Now, compute is very important, right? The laptops, like हामीलाई सानोमा पनि सिकाइएको छ, हैन? What is a computer? It does computation work, right? So if you put a raw machine or raw data into a computer, it processes it does the computation, and then provides the output. Meal जस्तै हो. So यो गहुँ राख्नुहुन्छ हजुरले मिलमा, and then it processes that and it converts that into a pito, हैन? And then you eat roti out of that. So it's similar to that. So we need some sort of machine, powerful machines for that computation. Now, one machine can be our laptop, using which we are joining in the call. Another machine can be GPU servers, right, that are used for AI ML workloads, for processing that high level of workloads. So computation is very, very important. And in this section, we'll look into multiple AWS services that belong to this compute section. So in this module, we'll look about compute services overview. We'll look into the major compute service of AWS called Amazon EC2. We'll look into the Amazon EC2 cost optimization techniques. We'll look into container services. Another compute type of solution available is container services. I know we'll look into that. Introduction to AWS Lambda, which is a function as a service. So module objective will provide overview of different AWS compute service in the cloud. We will demonstrate why to use Amazon EC2, identify the functionalities in EC2 console, perform basic functions on EC2. We'll identify EC2 cost optimization elements. We'll talk about Elastic Beanstalk, what sort of problem it solves, what is load AWS Lambda, and what sort of solutions we can build on top of Lambda and Elastic Beanstalk, right? And at the end, we will identify how to run containerized applications in a cluster of managed service. So let's first jump into compute services overview. Now, AWS has multiple compute services. Amazon EC2, Beanstalk, Autoscaling, ECR, ECS, VMware Cloud on AWS, AWS Batch, Lightsail, Serverless Application Repository, AWS Outpost. Now, these are few compute services that AWS provides us. We can look a vast list over here. So I'll go to AWS. I'll click on this and I'll simply go to compute section. This is compute section, and you can see these are the compute services available for us. App Runner, Batch, EC2, Image Builder, Beanstalk, Global View, Lambda, Lightsail, Outpost, Parallel Computing Service, SAR, and SimSpace Weaver. But in today's session, we'll be focusing on this highlighted services, that is Amazon EC2, ECR, ECS, Beanstalk, Lambda, Fargate, and EKS. So let's move ahead. Now, categorizing compute services, the services that we have talked, Amazon EC2 service belongs to infrastructure as a service platform. It's instance-based, and these are actually virtual machines. AWS Lambda is a serverless computing solution. It's a function-based service, and it offers great application management with low cost. We'll look more into these services. And then there comes hosting your application using containers. So if this is your requirement that you want to host applications using containers, then AWS provides container-based computing also. So you have ECS, EKS for Kubernetes workloads, you have Fargate. So if you don't want to manage container servers, you can go ahead and choose AWS Fargate, which is a serverless way of hosting your container solutions. And then there is ECR. We'll look into deeply each of these topics. And then there is Elastic Beanstalk, which is the platform as a service available in AWS that is used for hosting web applications and backend solutions. Right, so we'll look into each of this. Now, the question is, there are a lot of compute services, I know. There are a lot of compute services available. Now, the question can be, how should I choose which compute service? Multiple compute services, that's Hanya. But which one should I choose? The optimal compute service or service that you use will depend on your use case. So all of these AWS compute services that AWS has provided to us, they have their use case, right? When to use which. So we'll look that into the further sections. So some aspects to consider will be, what is your application design? What is your users pattern? Which configuration setting will you want to manage? Selecting the wrong compute solution for an architecture can lead to a lower performance efficiency. So it's a very, very important skill as a DevOps engineer, as a solutions architect, to understand the customer's application design, their users' patterns, their configuration settings, and then tell them that, hey, based on your application design and users pattern, I think the best compute solution for you would be to host your application as containers, or maybe you can use Elastic Beanstalk, right? So it's very important that you first know all of these compute services in very detail, and then you will be able to understand customers' requirements and then provide them the best compute solution to use for their applications. A good starting place, understand the available compute options, right? And we will further understand each of these. Section 2 is Amazon EC2, which is the de facto compute service of AWS. Now, you might have heard Amazon EC2 a lot of times, right? Because this is the main virtual server in AWS. So, sorry. This is the physical server. You can see a lot of wires, a lot of racks, right? A lot of physical servers hosted there. And this is on-premises server or a physical server. This is a setup of a physical server. Now, instead of that, what you can do on AWS is you can create similar servers on the AWS, but those servers are available to us through virtual mean. So virtually these servers are available for us, but in the background, those servers are hosted physically somewhere. Now, the EC2 instances are empty servers. So it's like an empty pod. So खाली सर्भर्सहरु हुन्छ हैन, and then त्यो खाली सर्भरहरुलाई हजुरले different purpose को लागि युज गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ. One can be, you can use EC2 for application servers, for web server, for data server, as a game server, as a mail server, as a media server, catalog server, file server, computing server, proxy server. So you can use Amazon EC2 instances for any purposes. Now, Amazon EC2 provides virtual machines referred to as EC2 instances in the cloud. It gives you full control over which guest operating system to choose, either it's Windows or a Linux or Mac, right? You can launch instance of any size. It can be 4-core CPU, 16 GB RAM, or 16-core CPU, 64 GB RAM, into the availability zone anywhere in the world in a specific region. You launch the instance with an Amazon machine image and launch instance with few clicks or line of code, and they are ready in minutes. So imagine if you want to set up 100 servers physically, you have to buy the servers. You have to set up the networking of those servers to make them up and running. It might take cost, it might take time, it might take manpower, but to create 100 servers in AWS is too easy. You can create 100 servers on AWS in like 1 minute. And this is the power of AWS, or we can say cloud computing. And you can control the traffic to and from instances using what? What can be the answer of this? You can control the traffic to and from instance using what? Exactly, security groups, because security groups are attached at the instance level, and yeah, network access control list as well, but especially security groups, because security groups act as a firewall at the instance level, right? Okay, so we'll move forward. Launching an Amazon EC2 instance. So when you launch an EC2 instance, there are multiple things to be configured, right? So त्यो सबै कुराहरु के हुन् हामी one by one here some. So the first one is AMI, second one is instance type, network settings, IAM role, user data, storage options, tags, security groups, and keep here. So म one by one यो सबै कुरा हजुरलाई लाइभ देखाउँदै जान्छु र थ्योरी पनि पढाउँदै जान्छु. So पहिला म EC2 मा जान्छु. मैले launch instance ma click gare. I'll name it demo server for now. demo server, right? I give it a name. Now the first thing is to choose an AMI, right? So first thing is to choose an AMI. Now AMI is Amazon machine image, which is an image. So for example, if you have a laptop uh, that's running on a image, right? It has an operating system image. It can be Ubuntu or it can be a Windows image, and you boot that image on your laptop and PCs, and then you start using that operating system. And same thing happens on the AWS EC2 also. You have to choose an AMI of a specific operating system. Now it can be Windows, it can be Linux operating system, and these AMIs can have pre-installed software as well. Now, there are multiple ways to choose AMI. One is Quick Start, the AMIs that are provided and approved by AWS. You can create your own AMI as well. You can choose pre-configured templates from third-party companies that have their own AMIs where there are pre-installed softwares already installed on top of that operating system. So you can go and purchase that as well. And there are community AMIs, the AMIs that are shared by others, and AWS doesn't take any responsibility of that. So you have to use that at your own risk. But for now, I'll use Quick Start and use the operating systems that are approved by AWS. So I'll go to my console and you can see I am here with Quick Start. You can see the Quick Start thing here, right? So I can choose Amazon Linux, Mac OS, Ubuntu, Windows, Red Hat, SUSE, Linux, Debian. For now, I'll choose Ubuntu. You can see this is AMI thing, right? And I'll choose the machine image as Ubuntu Server 2022.04. And I'll say confirm changes. And this is the AMI thing, right? Now I'll go to second thing, that is instance type. Now creating a new AMI. So before going to that, creating a new AMI, you can create a new AMI of your choice as well, right? So you can launch an instance, you can install specific server solutions on that or softwares on that, and then capture the new AMI, and then you can transfer that new AMI to a different region or a different AWS account as well. Let me show you. So for example, I have already one server. I have Biku server. I'll simply go to actions, image, and then I can create an image. So create an image, and this will create me an AMI of this server. And anything that is installed inside this server, the content, everything will be converted into an AMI, and then I can share that AMI to a friend that is hosting his application on another AWS account so that he or she can reuse this AMI to create instances, right? We can do that as well. The second is choosing instance type. Now you have chosen the operating system AMI. Now compute solutions or servers need to have processing power, right? They need RAM, they need CPU. Even our laptops have RAM and CPUs so that they can perform the processing, right? They need storage, right? They need network performance. So we need to select all of these, and these can be selected on AWS using instance type. We call it instance type. Right now, there are multiple instance type categories: general purpose, compute optimized, memory optimized, the application that consume more memory. We can use memory optimized for that, right? If there are applications that consume more CPU, then we can use compute optimized instance types. If there is some sort of application that consumes more storage, we can use storage optimized. If there is AI ML workloads, then we can go ahead and use accelerated computing instance types, right? So we can do that. So what we'll do over here is we'll go ahead and choose instance type. So we have chosen the AMI. We'll go ahead with the instance type section, and we can see T3.micro that provides 2-core CPU, 1 GB RAM, right? It shows the pricing. We can go ahead and choose compute intensive instance type, C5a.x large, C5a.2x large that provides 48 core CPUs and 96 GB of RAM. Of course, the higher the spec, the higher amount of price you pay, right? So for now, T3.micro is more than enough for me. So I'll choose that and I'll go ahead and move ahead. So instance type, naming convention. So T3.large, T3 is, this has their specification. So here T means T family, which is a general purpose family. 3 stands for generation number, and large stands for the size. So T3.nano, T3.micro, T3.small, T3.medium, and you can see the number of vCPUs and RAMs keeps on increasing on this part. So T3.x large, T3.2x large. So the number of CPUs and RAMs increase accordingly, right? So you can choose the size that will work for you or your customers. Now, you can select instance type based on your use case. So if it's a general purpose application, you can go ahead with instance type like A1, M4, M5, T2, or T3. Currently, we are using general purpose only, that is T3.micro. If it's compute optimized, you can go with C4, C5 that has high performance in-memory databases. For that, you can use memory optimized. For accelerated computing like machine learning workloads, you can go ahead and use accelerated computing instance type. For distributed file system workloads, you can go ahead and use storage optimized instance type, right? So there are these use cases that belong to this instance type, so you can go ahead and start using it. And each instance type has networking features as well, right? So the instance type provides us the network bandwidth as well. So it says network bandwidth, GBps varies by instance type. So if I go and show you the instance type, here is an example. So you can see C5a.x large. It has 1 core CPU, right? And other stuffs. You can go ahead and let me show you this thing. So M8C.medium, it provides network bandwidth of to 12.5 Gbps. So if you need higher, you can go ahead and choose the larger version of this instance type. Now someone can tell me what is, yeah, NACL is stateless, Ravi Vishnu. Can someone tell me what a bandwidth is? Bandwidth भने के हो, कसैले मलाई बुझाउन सक्नुहुन्छ? अथवा हजुरले के बुझ्नु भएको छ? What is a bandwidth? Anybody can try on that. Exactly, it is the maximum amount of data that is transferred in a network within a given amount of time. So the higher the bandwidth, the higher the speed. One example can be 4 लेनको बाटो छ हैन, अब 4 लेनको बाटोमा त गाडीहरु पनि त्यही अनुसार कुद्छन्, मजाले स्पिडमा कुद्छन्, because there is 4 lanes of width of roads. But एउटा सानो साङ्ग्रो बाटो छ भनेपछि अब गाडीहरु त्यसमा कुद्न पाउन्नन् स्पिडमा हैन. There will be traffic, there will be congestion. So the more the bandwidth, the higher data transfer. Okay, so we were here. So I'm the instance type पनि choose गरेम, right? Now we'll go ahead with network settings. हिजो पनि हामीले network setting को बारेमा हेर्यौं, where we define the VPC, the subnet where we want to create the server, the EC2 server. So I'll go with network setting. I'll edit it. I'll choose Cloud Club Pokhara VPC. I will choose public subnet for now, and then auto assign public IP enable. So I have created security group already yesterday. So copy. So this is the networks thing that I have configured, the VPC, the subnet, and the security group I have chosen in the network setting. So where should the instance be deployed? Identify the VPC and optionally the subnet. Should a public IP address be automatically assigned to make it internet accessible? So we have done that already. Now we can attach an IAM role. Now this is an optional thing, right? So if you want my EC2 instance to communicate with other AWS services like S3 or Lambda or database, right, internally, then we can provide a role to an EC2 instance that provides its the capability to do the communication with the respective AWS service. This is an optional thing, but we can configure that as well. User data, this is also an optional thing, but this is a bash script, or we can say a shell script that we can give at the creation time of my EC2 instance, where I can define the steps, the software packages, the dependencies that needs to be installed, and based on that, everything will be configured automatically on my EC2 instance. I don't have to manually get inside my EC2 and install that manually, right? So I have an EC2, I have an user data. So I'll copy this user data and paste this user data here in the advanced details section, in this section. So I'll paste it. So what it does is it updates the server, it installed Apache and crawl, it enables Apache server, it starts Apache server, and then it uses AWS metadata service to fetch information related with Amazon EC2 instance. That is, it's fetching out the availability zone where the EC2 instance is hosted. And then there is some sort of HTML file that is displaying text, AWS Cloud Club Pokhara, and then at the end, it restarts the Apache server, right? So everything will be, once I click on launch instance, everything that is given in this user data will be automatically installed and configured. So we have given that as well, right? So imagine you have 1,000 servers. Every 1,000 server ma हजुरले चाहिँ manually गएर यो सबै कुराहरु configure र install गर्न थाल्नु भयो भने त problem हुन्छ हैन. So instead of that, what you will do is you will give an user data, and instead of number of instance 1, you will give 100, and then on each of the 100 instances, this configuration is going to be applied. So this is a very easy option on EC2. I'll go back. I'm here, right? So user data pani hamle heryौं. Then there is storage. Storage ta hamle dinu पर्यो हैन, because there needs to be a root storage where the guest operating system needs to be installed. There should be a root volume, and then beside root volume, we can also attach additional storage volumes to our EC2 instance, which is optional thing, right? So for that, we can define the size of the disk in GBs, and there are different volume types. If you want hard disk drives or solid state drives, it's your choice. So you can go ahead and choose one, right? And you can enable encryption as well. So if the volume will be deleted when the instance is terminated, you can enable this option also. So if the EC2 instance is deleted, should the volume also be deleted? So EC2 instance delete हुँदाखेरि volume delete हुने कि volume लाई चाहिँ राखिराख्ने त्यो option पनि हामीले enable र disable गर्न सक्छौं. So I'll go ahead, and the storage thing is where it's here. Configure storage, right? For now, 8 GB is more than enough for me. I'll choose general purpose SSD JP2, and you can see it's not encrypted, which is not a good thing. So I'll click on advanced, and then I will enable the encryption. So now my EVS volume is encrypted, right? So we have configured the storage as well. I'll move ahead. Now, EC2 storage options, again, it's a durable block level storage volume. So you can stop the instance and start it again, and the data will still be there. So it's a persistent volume. So anything written inside that volume, even the EC2 instance is deleted, the data still remains inside that EC2 instance. And then the another thing is Amazon Instance Store. That is an ephemeral storage. That is a non-persistent storage where any data that is kept will be lost if the database is stopped and started. So if the instance stops, the data here is going to be deleted. And this acts as a caching solution, caching storage, right? So no critical data needs to be stored in Instance Store. Further, other options are also there that you can attach with your EC2 instance. You can attach EFS file systems and Amazon S3 also, so that the data that needs to be stored on EC2 can be moved to the EFS or EC3 also. So that solution is also available. But अहिलेलाई मैले के गरेँ, मैले EVS volume choose गरेँ. EVS volume of what number? Of size 8. And you can see the storage type here is EVS, right? So we have configured that storage thing also. So this is the same thing. So there is an EC2 instance, there is an instance store, which is an informal volume. And this 20 GB is a root volume attached to an EC2 instance, and you can extra attach 500 GB or 1000 GB of volume as a secondary storage to the same instance, right? So you can do that as well. Now the 7th number is tags, which is very important. Now tag defines is how you can attach metadata to your EC2 instance. A tag is a label that you can assign to your AWS resources. It consists of key and an optional value. So if I go here and if I go up, this is the section where you can give tags. Now tag is a key value pair. Now this is the metadata for your EC2 instance. Now the name of my server is demo server. Now another tag I can add, owner. My name is Desh Deepak. I'm the one who is creating this server, right? I'll add another tag that is environment. And this is test environment. This is not a production environment, right? Let's add me another thing that is project. Again, this is a test project. This is not a, or we can say Cloud Club project. Right? Cloud Club project. So these are the tags that I have added. Now tags work as a key value pair. So जति पनि add गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ. You can add up to 46 more tags, and these tags are used for identifying who created this tag, what is the environment, right? So if another developer comes, so he or she doesn't get confused, he looks into the tags and says, okay, the owner was this Deepak, this is meant for test environment, this is meant for Cloud Club project, and he or she identifies that, okay, I have all the information in front of me. But if there were no tags added, that would have created a big problem to identify what that EC2 instance is meant for. Now, tagging is how you attach metadata. We understood that. So potential benefits of tagging is filtering, automation, cost allocation. Now at the end, what you can do is at the billing level, at the AWS Cost Explorer level, you can go ahead and filter that. Please provide me a monthly cost of a server or number of servers with the tag project and the value Cloud Club project. So if at the end of the month there were 5 servers with the key project and value Cloud Club project, it will show me the cost of 5 servers with these tags. So tags can be used for that purpose only, for that purpose also, for like filtering and finding out what was the cost estimation related with that server. So त्यसको लागि पनि हामीले यसलाई युज गर्न सक्छौं. हामीले मजाको ट्याग्स नि दियौं. अब हामी सिक्युरिटी ग्रुप हेर्छौं. सिक्युरिटी ग्रुप त हामीले हेरि नै सक्यौं, राइट? एकदमै मजाले हामीले अट्याच नि गरिसकेका छौं. हामीले त्यसपछि 9 नम्बरको हेर्छौं, की पेयर. नाउ की पेयर इज used to get inside the server. So now you create a server. Now you need to get inside the server. Now that might be for troubleshooting, अथवा कुनै problem solve गर्नलाई, अथवा केही कुरा logsहरु हेर्नलाई, हैन? So we need to get inside the server. So with key pairs we can create key pairs, and then using that key pairs we can go ahead and get inside our server. So when we create a key pair, we get a public key. Public key AWS मा स्टोर हुन्छ सर्भर भित्र, र प्राइभेट की चाहिँ हाम्रो लोकल डिभाइसमा डाउनलोड हुन्छ. And using that private key, we will go ahead and get inside our servers. It enables secure connection to the instance. For Windows AMI, for Linux AMI, you can use that keys accordingly. So let's go ahead and generate a key, right? So key pair, I'll create a new key pair. Let's name it Club Pokhara. I can choose the key pair type. RSA is fine for me. PEM format is fine for me. Once I click create key pair, the public section of this key will be stored on my this particular instance, and the private key will be automatically downloaded on my local device. So you can see Cloud Club Pokhara.pem has been downloaded on my local machine. So everything looks perfect. We have tags, we have AMI, we have instance type, we have key pair to get inside the server, we have network settings, we have configured it to be hosted on the public subnet, we have a security group, we have a volume that is encrypted, and then we have a user data. So we need these all things configured on my EC2 instance. We are good to go. If I need 10 servers, I can give the number here. If I need 100, 1,000, I can give here. But for now, I'll choose one server only, and then I'll simply click on launch instance. And then view all instances. And then you can see the demo server is in running state, and the status checks is in initializing state as well. Let me filter this out. So now, while it's initializing in the background, the script that I have given, the content, the commands that are inside that script, त्यो सबै यो सर्भर भित्र कन्फिगर भइरहेको छ. So let's give it a bit of time, and then we'll use its public IP and see if it displays the content that we have defined in our user data. That is sorry, where was that? Yeah, here. So it should display AWS Cloud Club Pokhara, and it should define me what? It should define me the availability zone of my EC2 instance. I'll copy and paste the public IP here. And you can see it says I love AWS Cloud Club Pokhara from instance US East 1A. So it's hosted on US East 1A. If you guys go ahead, I can put this IP in chat. You guys can open the IP and you can see the same content at your end also. Right? I love Cloud Club Pokhara, and it says it's hosted on US East 1A. You can go ahead and verify if it's actually hosted in US East 1A. Yeah, it's hosted in availability zone US East 1A. Now the question is, यसले कसरी थाहा पायो कि US East 1A यहाँनिर प्रिन्ट गर्नुपर्छ भनेर? कसरी थाहा पायो यहाँनिर? If this server would have hosted in US East 1A, 1B or 1C, that would have been displayed over here. But how this server identified that this is US East 1A and I should display that on the browser? The power remains in the concept called metadata. Right? Let me go ahead and show you guys something called, let me show you the code, right? So यहाँनिर के छ भनेपछि I am fetching the availability zone from the EC2 instance metadata service. So the metadata is the data of the EC2 instance itself. So the EC2 instance को data मैले fetch गर्न सक्छु कुन availability zone मा छ, public IP के हो त्यसको हैन, त्यो सबै कुराहरु using this IP, which is 169.254.169.254 latest, and then I can generate the API token key, and then I am using that token key, and using that token key I am fetching key availability zone. You can see I am fetching the availability zone that is hosted in this location. IP address, latest, metadata, placement, provide me the availability zone. Right? I am doing this. So accordingly, using this metadata location, I have configured my code to fetch the actual availability zone and then print that on the browser. Right? So I'll move ahead. So this is the EC2 console. Now, if I show you the EC2 console, you can see a lot of information, right? the details, the instance ID, the host name type, the private IP address, VPC ID where it's created, the subnet where it's created, right? The instance detail, the image that we have used, Ubuntu version 22.04. On the networking section, you can see the subnet thing and other stuffs. On the security group, I can go ahead and open the security group and I can make changes on it accordingly, right? I will go to subnet group. In the inbound rule, I will go ahead and remove HTTP. And if I go ahead now, and you can see on port HTTP, which is working on port 80. So once I hit this IP, it's calling my server on port 80. But at the security group, I have closed the port 80. That's why it will not show me a response. It will show some sort of error after a few seconds. But once I go ahead and add the inbound rule here, that is HTTP, I can simply save the changes and refresh it once again. You can see it starts working perfectly now. So this is the power of security group. Now in security group, what you can do is you can go ahead and edit the inbound rules. And instead of opening the application to all, I can open it to my IP address only, so that I can only access this application. No one else is going to be able to access this application. So if I go and refresh this, I'm able to access it. अब हजुरहरुले चाहिँ हजुरहरुको इन्डमा चाहिँ त्यो ओपन गर्न ट्राई गर्नु, एप्लिकेसन खुल्दैन. Can anyone try at their end? The application will not open. Did that open on any of us? कसैकोमा खुल्यो? Exactly, that's not going to work because I have configured my security group to accept request on port 80 only from my IP address, from my device IP address. Right, I can show you. So we can do this blacklisting and whitelisting thing also on security group, to which IP should I allow the access. So you can see 27.34.110, 27.34.110.217.217. So this is my device IP. So I'll be able to access my application from the my device only. As this is a public application, I will have to open that by default, otherwise it will not work on others' device. So it's open to the internet. Now anyone can access this application, right? So this is what is needed, the components that are needed for Amazon EC2 instance. Now we created EC2 instance using AWS Management Console, the graphical user interface, right? This one, the console. Now you can create the same EC2 instance using AWS CLI using this command, where you define the image ID, the number of EC2 instance you want to create, the instance type you want, the key name, the security group name, right? The region where you want to create that EC2 instance. And using the CLI also, you can create the same EC2 instance. Now EC2 instance lifecycle. So we have an AMI, we choose the Ubuntu AMI, we clicked on launch button, and then it went to pending state, pending bata running ma jancha. Now running bhako EC2 instance lai हामीले reboot नि गर्न सक्छौं, हामीले त्यसलाई stop नि गर्न सक्छौं, hibernate नि गर्न सक्छौं. So stop गरे भनेपछि stopping state मा जान्छ, stop हुन्छ, stop EC2 instance लाई फेरि हामीले start गर्यौं भनेपछि फेरि pending state मा जान्छ, and then it will come within seconds in a running state. And for the running server, we can also go ahead and terminate that server. And once we click on terminate, it will go in a shutting down state, and finally it will get terminated. So this is the overall life cycle of an EC2 instance. Now we'll talk about Elastic IP. Elastic IP is an public IP address that is static, that is a persistent public IP address. Now, why this is important? Because here currently, I'm not using the Elastic IP address. So if you go here, you can see the Elastic IP section over here is empty. I'm not using a static IP address, I'm using the dynamic public IP address. So if I stop this EC2 instance and restart it again, I am going to get a new IP address. And I have to send this IP address to all the customers again, which is not practical, right? So instead of that, I will create an EC2 elastic IP that will remain all the time with us with this EC2 instance until and unless we manually delete that elastic IP. So if we have that requirement, we can go ahead and use elastic IPs. For production solutions, for production applications, for production servers, elastic IP is mandatory. You have to use that, right? किनभने IP multiple times change हुँदाखेरि like your application is going to be hampered. So we can use elastic IP also. We talked about instance metadata, right? Instance metadata is the data about your instance. And while you are connected to the instance, you can view it using this location. And we did that. We found the availability zone and displayed that on the server using this path. And we use the instance metadata to do that. Now, Amazon CloudWatch monitoring, we can, so once the your server चाहिँ create भइसक्यो हैन, अब यो सर्भरलाई मोनिटर पनि त गर्नु पर्यो. यसको CPU युटिलाइजेसन कति हुन्छ, यसको RAM युटिलाइजेसन कति हुन्छ, यसको स्टोरेज युटिलाइजेसन कति हुन्छ हैन, त्यो सबै मोनिटर गर्नलाई by default AWS provides us monitoring section. Now, you can go ahead and check the CPU utilization, right? You have multiple filters, maximum CPU utilization, under 3 hours, under 12 hours, under 1 day. We can choose custom timeline also, 1 week data. We can view the 4 weeks data, right? We can see all of those. As it's a newly created server, we can go ahead and check 1 hour's data, and we can see the CPU utilization has spiked a bit, that is, has reached 10%. And we have a lot of other metrics that you can go ahead and analyze how your server is performing at the moment and in the past, how that performed in the past as well, using the monitoring section. And that monitoring section is also available at the AWS CloudWatch service as well. So AWS CloudWatch is a monitoring service where you can monitor the EC2 instances as well. Now, there are two types of monitoring available with EC2. The first is basic monitoring, which is default. So you say basic monitoring by default. And what we can do is we can go ahead and enable detailed monitoring also. So that will provide us a fixed monthly rate for 7 pre-selected metrics, and metrics data will be delivered every 1 minute. So for the basic monitoring, the data that we'll get is in a difference of every 5 minutes. And if we need the data to be available every 1 minute, we have to enable the detailed monitoring, and we have to pay a specific amount for that. But in most of the cases, basic monitoring works. But if your application is critical, you need data in a difference of 1 minute, then you can enable the detailed monitoring as well, right? So section 2 completes here, where we looked the de facto compute service of AWS called Amazon EC2. We looked into how to launch an EC2 instance using AMI and other components like instance type, security groups, user data, right? And how we can use AWS CloudWatch monitoring solution or monitoring section to identify and analyze how my server is performing. So we completed our section 2 as well. Any questions so far? So there is a question that says, user data run script while launching EC2 instance for the terms first time. Yeah, that is correct, Alan. So the user data works for the first time only while you are creating the EC2 instance. The second time, it's not going to work. So you need to be careful about that. Any other questions, guys? Yeah, there are multiple ways you can SSH into servers without PIM file. Let me show you a few. The one thing is you click your server, त्यसपछि यहाँ connect भन्ने button छ, connect मा click गर्नुभयो भने these are the methods that you can use to SSH into the server. The first is EC2 Instance Connect, which is a browser-based SSH capability that AWS has provided. So I can simply click on connect. I'll not use the PIM key for this. And I will get inside my server. So this is a browser-based SSH capability that is managed at the instance level. I'm inside my server, right? I can check the Apache server status, sudo systemctl status Apache 2, and you can see the Apache is running. Another is Session Manager. Now, there is a service in AWS called Session Manager, using which you can SSH into the EC2 instance as well without opening port 22. SSH client is the option that you can use. जुन युज गरेर हजुरले के गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ, की चाहिँ युज गर्नुपर्छ. So if you want to use key to SSH into the server, you have to use the SSH client option. And another one is EC2 serial console option that is also available to SSH into the server. Now this is another capability to SSH into the server that uses, let me show you, username and password to get into the server, right? So it asks me the password. Let me check. Yeah, it asks me the username password. I don't have, I मैले configure गरेको छैन, that's why it will not give me to access into it. Right? Yeah, login incorrect. So these are the 4 ways using which you can get into the server, get SSH'd into the server. Clear छ एलेनलाई? How to give SSH access without AWS ID? मैले क्वेशन चाहिँ बुझिन हजुरको. AWS ID नै चाहिन्न नि SSH को लागि त, IP एड्रेस चाहिन्छ. And for that you can use Systems Manager. Like in our third-party applications, I didn't got your question again. Like in our third-party applications. Now, how, maybe हजुरले भन्न खोज्नु भएको, how other application will connect to the EC2 instances, right? Am I correct? Am I understanding that question correct? So maybe you can rephrase that question for me, and then I can answer you that, right? How can I connect like this? Yeah, you can do that. You can do that. You can do that using the PIM key. You can do that using PIM key. PIM key is needed for that. So you mean SSH at the rate in the IP address. So, yep. कसैले अनम्युट गर्नुभएको थियो. Yeah, we can do that using username and password also. We can do that. मजाले गर्न सकिन्छ. So what you can do is हजुर सर्भर भित्र जानुस्, सर्भर भित्र हजुरले username बनाउनुस्. You can create multiple Linux users, provide these users the access required, right? It can be a read access, it can be a write access, and then assign a password to that user, and then using that username and password you can get into the servers. Yes, that is possible. I answered your question, right, Ellen? Now for that, but you have to do a practical of that, right? So you can go and create an EC2 instance in your sandbox and then try the method that you are telling to me, right? And then you will be more clear on that. But SSH, there are multiple ways to SSH into the server, and as in the background, it's Ubuntu server. You have a Linux server though in the background that AWS is providing. So you have a normal Ubuntu server अथवा Linux server मा जे गर्न पाइन्छ, you can do all those functionalities on that EC2 Ubuntu server as well. So you can go ahead and try things. Okay, let's move ahead. So section 2 completed. I showed you the live demo, right? Not a recorded demo, how to create an EC2 instance. Now there is a lab that you guys need to complete. It's a lab about EC2 instance. So in that lab, you will launch and create your first virtual machine. So launch your instance, monitor your instance, update your security groups, and access the web server. Resize your instance. Even you can resize your instance. You can change your server spec from 2-core CPU to 4-core CPU. You will be able to explore EC2 limits, and you will also be able to test the termination protection. So जति पनि हामीले अघि नै capabilities हेर्यौं, those are the basic capabilities, the needed capabilities, these ones, the 1 to 9. EC2 को अरु capabilities, अरु features हरु नि छन् हैन, that you guys can further go ahead and explore. So this will be your final product for your lab. So lab हजुरहरुले घरमा गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ, right? Now we'll move ahead with section 3, that is Amazon EC2 cost optimization. Because you are creating an EC2 instance, and EC2 instance ma के छ, elastic IP छ, त्यसको नि पैसा पर्छ, हजुरको 3.micro छ, which is 1 core CPU 2 GB RAM, त्यसको नि पैसा पर्छ, storage जुन हजुरले दिनु भएको छ त्यसको नि पैसा पर्छ. So there are a lot of factors associated with EC2 that can cause cost, that will incur cost, हैन? And we need to find ways. If I have to run multiple servers, hundreds and thousands of servers, then I need to go ahead and know what are the ways I can optimize the cost. What are the ways I can reduce the cost for my servers, right? And there are few solutions that we can use and implement to lower down the cost related with EC2. Let's see few of those. Now, Amazon EC2 has pricing models. So when you are creating an EC2 instance, by default, it follows on-demand instances pricing model, where you pay by hour. So you have created this EC2 instance, and it worked for like 1 hour, and you will be liable to pay the price of 1 hour only. 1 घण्टापछि यो सर्भरलाई हजुरले बन्द गरिदिनु भयो भनेपछि 1 घण्टाको मात्रै पैसा पर्यो, त्यसपछि बन्द गरिदिनु भयो, टर्मिनेट गरिदिनु भयो भनेपछि परेन. Right? That belongs to on-demand instance. अर्को छ reserved instance. Okay, on-demand भित्रको पहिला प्याम, and then there is dedicated host and dedicated instances. Now, currently, the server that you have created, just a minute, right? मेरो ब्याकग्राउन्ड नोइज आइरा हो मेरोबाट, कसैलाई के प्रब्लम भयो त्यसले ब्याकग्राउन्ड नोइज आइरा हो. Can anyone confirm that? Okay, it's fine. Okay, awesome. Let's move ahead, right? So हामी यहाँ थियौं. So dedicated host or dedicated instances, these are the capability where you can book a physical server for your EC2 instance. So currently, अहिले जुन हजुरको EC2 instance, so this EC2 instance is hosted in a shared capability model, in a shared tenancy, हैन? So एउटा physical server छ, अब त्यो physical server मा चाहिँ मेरो पनि EC2 instance त्यही बनिरहेछ. हजुरले अर्को युजरले जो अर्को AWS account बनाएको छ त्यसले पनि EC2 instance क्रिएट गर्यो भने मेरै साइडमा मेरै physical server मा चाहिँ उसको पनि EC2 instance बसिरहेको हुन्छ. But in multiple cases there may be requirement due to compliance, हैन, अथवा due to government rules where there is a need that you need a dedicated physical server, and there should be no other client server is associated or kept inside that physical server. So if that's the requirement, you can go ahead and choose a physical server or a physical instance separate from others that is hosted within a physical server itself for you only. Then you can go ahead and choose dedicated host, where you purchase a physical server with EC2 instance capability fully dedicated for your use. And if your use case is to purchase an instance, you can run the dedicated instance in a VPC hardware that is dedicated to a single customer only. But this is a bit costly, right? And if it doesn't fall inside your requirement, then you can start avoiding it, because these are costly things to book a whole physical server for your EC2 instance only. Then there is reserved instances. Now, if you reserve a lot of things, हजुरले धेरै कुरा रिजर्भ गर्नुभयो भनेपछि हजुरले डिस्काउन्ट पाउनुहुन्छ. So that's the fact thing, right? If you buy more things, you get a discount. And same thing happens on the AWS as well. So if you reserve an instance type for either 1 year or 3 year, then AWS provides you with few discount on hourly charges for your instance type. So you can do that as well. So if you have an application जुन कि अबको 1 वर्ष अथवा 3 वर्षमा 2 कोर CPU 4GB RAM मा मज्जाले चल्छ 1-2 वर्ष 3 वर्ष, त्यसमा ट्राफिक स्पाइकहरु आउन भनेपछि त्यस्तो एप्लिकेसन छ भनेपछि you can go ahead with reserve instances and get the discount that AWS provides for that. Another one is scheduled reserve instances, where instead of reserving your instance for either 1 year or 3 years, you reserve for a specific scheduled period of time only. It can be every Sunday from 12 a.m. to 12 p.m. and you can define a schedule, so your instance will be reserved for that period of time only, and you can get a discount for that as well, right? So instead of 1 year and 3 year, you can choose a 1 year term, and then inside that you can define a specific schedule period, like once a week or twice a week. And then if your EC2 instance runs inside that framework, then you get the discount. And then there is spot instances, where instances run as long as they have available, as long as they are available, and your bid is above the spot instances price. So spot instances भने कस्तो भनेपछि AWS मा कतिपय चोटी चाहिँ फिजिकल सर्भर्सहरु र्याक्सहरु सबै खाली भएर बसेका हुन्छन्. AWS लाई त अब त खाली भएर त फाइदा छैन. सो AWS ले के गर्छ, त्यो खाली रिसोर्सेसहरुलाई चाहिँ आफ्नो कस्टमर्सहरुलाई सस्तोमा दिइराको हुन्छ. ल यो वाला खाली भएको सर्भर चाहिँ मैले तलाई $100 पर्थ्यो भनेपछि म तलाई $20 मा दिन्छु, बट विथ अ कन्डिसन दैट इफ मलाई त्यो खाली सर्भर ब्याक चाहियो भनेपछि म त्यसलाई 2 मिनेटको नोटिफिकेसन दिएर तबाट छिन्न सक्छु, तबाट लिन सक्छु. त्यो एउटा कन्डिसन हुन्छ when we are if you are opting to use spot instances. It's similar to म एउटा होटलमा गए हैन, and then होटल पुरै खाली थियो, and then the hotel price was 1000 rupees, but the hotel को ओनरले के भन्यो मलाई भनेपछि ओके होटल चाहिँ पुरै खाली छ हैन, सो म तलाई चाहिँ यो रुम चाहिँ 1000 को सट्टा 200 रुपैयाँमा चाहिँ दिन्छु, तर एउटा कन्डिसन के हो भनेपछि अर्को मान्छे जो 1000 रुपैयाँ दिनलाई रेडी हुन्छ त्यो बेला चाहिँ तैले यो रुम चाहिँ 2 मिनेटमा छोड्नु पर्छ है भनेर एउटा कन्डिसनमा मैले त्यो मान्छेलाई एकदमै सस्तो दाममा मेरो खाली होटलको रुमहरु दिए, बट विथ अ कन्डिसन दैट he or she have to leave. If a person comes to pay the real price, that is 1000 rupees, he or she have to leave within 2 minutes, right? So if we have a critical application, then it's not recommended to use spot instances, right? So prices can be significantly less expensive compared to on-demand instances. It's good choice when you have flexibility in when your application can run. So if you have applications like batch processing or the applications that are non-critical, right? जसको deletionहरुले चाहिँ खासै प्रब्लम पर्दैन, त्यस्तो इन्स्टेन्सेसहरु हामीले स्पट इन्स्टेन्सेस युज गरेर रन गर्न सक्छौं. right? So these are the pricing models, and based on our requirement, we can go ahead and choose on-demand, dedicated host, dedicated instance, reserved, schedule reserve, or spot instances based on our workload and workloads requirement, and save a specific amount of price on our EC2 instances. So on-demand, it's low cost and flexible. You pay only for the amount that you use. Spot, it's used for large scale and dynamic workload, non-critical workloads. Reserved, it's for predictability, ensures compute capacity is available when needed, and dedicated hosts save money on licensing cost, helps meet compliance and regulatory requirements. So we can choose based on our benefits, the pricing models. Use cases, so if we have short-term, spiky, or unpredictable workloads, we can use on-demand. It's specially used for application development and testing. For spot instances, applications with flexible start and end times, and applications only feasible at very low compute price. Users with urgent computing needs for large amount of additional capacity, at that level, we can go ahead and use the spot instances. For reserved, if we have a steady state and predictable usage workload, we can go ahead and use reserved instance for like either 1 year or 3-year period. And dedicated host, if you have a requirement of bring your own license, either for compliance and regulatory restrictions, users and license tracking, or control instance placement, at that period of time, you can go ahead and use dedicated hosts. So AWS does provide multiple pricing models, and based on our requirements, we can go ahead and use these pricing models. So for spiky workloads, on demand, time insensitive workloads, spot instances, steady and predictable state workloads, reserve instances, and highly sensitive workloads, we can go ahead and use dedicated hosts. Now, the four pillars of these are the यो सबै प्राइसिङ मोडल्सहरु भयो जुन AWS ले हामीलाई प्रोवाइड गर्छ हैन तर there are other four pillars of cost optimization that we can use to lower down the cost. The first one is to right size, to choose the right size for my EC2 instance. So for example, if I go over here, this is a demo server, right? यहाँनिर मैले 2 core CPU 1 GB RAM को सर्भर युज गरेको छु. अब मैले यो टेस्ट सर्भरको लागि यहाँ गएर 16 कोर सीपीयू र 64 जीबी र्याम को सर्भर युज गर्न त भएन हैन, because this is for demo purpose, so the lower one will work for me. It's not needed that I use higher spec server. So right sizing is very important. We need to be aware that for what workload, what instance type do I need. Increase elasticity. So if you have workload that is unpredictable, right? For that you can use AWS automatic scaling, or जसले automatic scaling को बारेमा module 9 अथवा 10 मा पढ्नुहुन्छ हैन. There is a section for automatic scaling. So automatic scaling हरु युज गरेर हजुरले के गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ, चाहिएको बेला चाहिँ सर्भर बढी बन्दिन्छ, बढी सर्भरहरु क्रिएट हुन्छन्, र नचाहिएको बेला अटोमेटिकली सर्भर एउटा दुईटा मात्रै बन्दिन्छ. So automatically, based on the load, the server size increases and then the server size decreases. Now here I'm talking about horizontal scaling. We are talking about adding the number of EC2 instances, not increasing the spec of the EC2 instances. So if you want to increase the spec of the EC2 instances, it's called vertical scaling. If we increase the number of EC2 instances, then it's called horizontal scaling. So we do the horizontal scaling using automatic scaling. And then the third one is to choose optimal pricing models that we already looked, right? We can choose on demand or spot or reserved based on our requirement. And then pillar 4, optimize the storage choices as well. So for now, 8 GB of storage is fine for me. I'm using the SSD type, right? SSD type of storage. If it's the need that you need STD type hard disk drive, right? Or EBS throughput optimized HDD type. So here also it says Amazon EBS throughput optimized STD, SD1 storage typically cost half as much as default general purpose SSD storage option. So if I am to save a cost, I can go ahead and explore this, and if this fits into my requirement, I can go ahead and use this and save a lot of cost, right? And further, you can go ahead and identify most appropriate destination for your type of data. Now you can go ahead and use S3, or you can go ahead and use EFS volumes as well. So it's very important when it comes to choosing storage, instance type, pricing models, and either I want to implement the elasticity or not. And implementing these 4 pillars, I can further optimize the cost of the EC2 instance. So the goal here is cost optimization is an ongoing process. It's not that हजुरले एकचोटी चाहिँ 1 महिनाको अन्तरालमा चाहिँ एनालिसिस गरेर सबै कुरा मिलाउनु भो मेरो सर्भर चाहिँ धेरै रिसोर्स कन्ज्युम गरिरहेको थियो सो मैले मेरो सर्भरको स्पेक बढाइदिए स्टोरेज घटाइदिए मैले रिजर्भ इन्स्टेन्स किनिदिए हैन सो अब चाहिँ एभ्रिथिङ विल वर्क फाइन it's not like that. So cost optimization is an ongoing process. You need to go ahead and keep analyzing things, how your server is behaving, what's the user response, how your server is behaving, what's the CPU utilization, what the RAM utilization, right? So based on that, you need to keep on measuring, monitoring, and improving your infrastructure as well and your associated cost as well. So recommendations, you can enforce cost allocations tagging to identify which server is consuming more price. You can define metrics, set targets, and review regularly. You encourage the team to architect for cost. So when you're designing a solution for an architecture, for an client, कुनै क्लाइन्टको लागि कुनै आर्किटेक्चर बनाइराख्नु भएको छ भनेपछि त्यो बेला नै cost factorलाई पनि include गर्नुपर्छ. So that once you implement that architecture in real world, you don't get surprises. You don't get billings that is surprising to your customer and to you as well. So it's very important when you're designing solutions, you see the cost factor as well. So this architecture that I'm going to build, it's going to cost $100 at the end of the month or $200 at the end of the month. So you need to do that cost analysis as well. And assign the responsibility of optimization to an individual or to a team in your organization, so that the team or an individual keeps on looking into the matrices, the billings, and then keeps monitoring and improving the cost optimization section of your server. So this was about section 3, which was about Amazon EC2 pricing models and the 4 pillars of cost optimization. That was right sizing, increase elasticity, where we will implement automatic scaling. Third was optimal pricing models, using the optimal pricing models that we looked previously also. And then we can also save cost by optimizing the storage that we attach to the EC2 instance. Any questions in the section 3? And then I'll move to the remaining 2 sections, and then we can complete this module. And I can take more questions from you guys. Any questions? How can we monitor and troubleshoot performance issues of EC2? How can you monitor, troubleshoot performance issues on EC2? Now, there are multiple ways, right? One is you can use AWS native solution for that. Now, one thing is using the inbuilt monitoring solution, right? So you can choose to view CPU utilization, the network in, the network out. Now, here you cannot see RAM utilization. हजुरलाई RAM utilization देखाइरहेको छैन, यसले storage utilization पनि देखाइरहेको छैन, because by default that is not available हजुरलाई ऱ्याम युटिलाइजेसन नि चाहिएछ, स्टोरेज युटिलाइजेसन नि चाहिएछ, and you want your EC2 logs to be stored on the EC2 instance. For that, you have to install CloudWatch agent on your EC2 instance. So CloudWatch agent sa EC2 instance भित्र गएर install गर्ने, and that CloudWatch agent will scan your EC2 instance timely and send the logs and extra metrics like RAM utilization and storage utilization to the CloudWatch section, where you can monitor a lot of stuffs, the logs and the metrics, and based on that you can make a decision and what should I do next. So if I go over, I can go over here, right? So configure, yahanira pani bhaneko cha configure CloudWatch agent. So if I click here, you have to perform these steps to install CloudWatch agent on your EC2 instance. I'll not do that for now. You guys can try that, right? Monitoring ma janchu ma. So I can go ahead and let me open this in CloudWatch. I want to open this in CloudWatch, like view in metrics. So view in metrics ma garne bittikai it redirects me to a de facto monitoring service of AWS called CloudWatch. So yahanira हेर्नु भयो भने CloudWatch भित्र छु. CloudWatch भित्र गएर हजुरले जे नि गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ, लग ग्रुप बनाउन सक्नुहुन्छ, लग्सको एनोमलिज ट्र्याक गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ हैन. लग्सहरु धेरै छ भनेपछि त्यसभित्र एसक्यूएल क्वेरीजहरु लेखेर त्यसको इन्साइट्स निकाल्न सक्नुहुन्छ. यु क्यान लाइक मेक युज अफ एप्लिकेसन सिग्नल्स, एपीएन हैन. त्यसपछि नेटवर्क मोनिटरिङ, यो सबै कुराहरु कन्फिगर गरेर एकदमै ग्रानुलर लेभलको कन्सेप्ट्सहरु, ग्रानुलर लेभलको रिक्वेस्ट फ्लोहरु जुन हजुरको EC2 इन्स्टेन्समा भइराछ त्यो इच एन्ड एभ्री फ्लोलाई पनि ट्र्याक गर्न सकिन्छ. देयर आर मोनिटरिङ सर्भिसेस लाइक प्रोमेथेस, ग्राफाना, एक्सरे हैन. यो सबै टुल्सहरु युज गरेर यु क्यान गो अहेड एन्ड configure your EC2 instance to throw the metrics and logs at a very granular level that you want. So that is possible. Did I answer your question, Ayusha? How can you monitor and troubleshoot performance on? I have a doubt. Let us say I made a mistake in architecture. So to do rollback to a resilient phase, I need to roll back now, and it is hard now. How architects handle? Now, you have designed a solution, right? You have designed an architecture and you have implemented that architecture into the cloud. Now you have identified that, okay, that's a problem, that there was a problem in the architecture and that problem is causing a huge issue for my customers. Now, one thing is you go back and re-architecture or redesign your architecture with the best practices that you have learned from. And the second is rollback thing. So rollback thing is available for multiple AWS services like CI/CD pipelines, right? Code deploy has a rollback feature. Elastic Beanstalk is a service that has a rollback feature, but that's a AWS service specific feature. There is no specific feature in AWS that is going to roll back your architecture to the best practice, right? So for that, what you can do is you have to redesign your architecture to roll back to the best practices. But if you are talking about AWS services, the rollback feature is enabled by default in most of the AWS services. So if the version 1 doesn't work or it had a problem while deploying, then so for example, you were deploying version 2 on the servers, right? While deploying the version 2, there was a problem in between. Now, there are few services on AWS like Code Deploy. It will identify that and it will automatically roll back the changes to the healthy version 1 so that no customers are affected. So yes, based on the AWS services, there is a rollback feature, but at the architecture level, you have to totally redesign it and implement it again. Did I answer your question? Awesome. Okay, let's move ahead because we are back in time. We have 15 minutes and I have a bit more to share, right? So I think I'll take more 15 minutes of you guys. And then or further key questions you can drop it into the chat. Let's move ahead without wasting any further time. So the section 4 is about container services. Now, I'll ask a question. How many of us are familiar with containers, Docker, or anything specific with containers like Docker or Kubernetes? So anyone who knows the basics, who is familiar with that, type 1, who is unaware about that, type 2. Yeah, anything related with containers. It can be Docker or anything. Okay, I can see a lot of ones, which is good thing. So we have 11 people here, and I can see only 3 responses. That is fine. That is fine. I'm just talking about the basics. So just knowing the concept, what Docker is, what container is, right? How things work, like that sort of basic things, not that deep. Okay, the base says 2, which is fine. So I'm teaching you guys at a very basic level. So as a time I lina सक्छु है थोरै maybe 30 minutes extra because I need to complete this section today. So maybe 30 minutes मा चाहिँ यो भ्याउँछ आज. So I'll take a bit of time of you guys. Is it okay? Awesome. So let's move ahead into the container world. So let's talk about container services. Now, first we need, before talking about the container services, we need to first understand what a container is, right? So let me show you the image of a container. So these are containers, right? Big containers. Now, if you see these containers, right, let me open this one, or let me open this one. Now you can see these containers has a fixed shape, right? Like they have a fixed shape, they have like different colors, which is fine. Now inside these containers, we can put anything. Now we can put rice, we can put meat, we can put clothes, right? And anything that's stored inside this container, this is exported like to multiple countries, right? Through boats. Now we can consider that boat as a docker that is responsible for managing those Docker containers. Now these are the containers, the boat is Docker, and inside this container, we package our application. We package it with dependencies, the runtime, the operating system, each and everything. We pack it inside this container. And once the container is packed, it doesn't matter it is loaded on a small ship or a big ship, right? It's going to be exported anyway to a specific destination. It doesn't matter it goes on top of a small ship or a big ship, right? So that's the beauty of a container, because everything inside this container that I have kept is safe and it's going to be exported anyway. So this is the analogy that works with container as well. So container are a method of operating system virtualization. Now, as I previously mentioned, एउटा container भित्र हजुरले जुनै पनि सामान राख्न सक्नुहुन्छ. So in the concept of containers in tech, you package that container with your application code, and the dependencies that are needed to run that application, the configurations, and the operating system on top of which that container is going to run. Now, benefits, as I mentioned, एउटा container pack भइसकेपछि त्यो container सानो बोटमा export होस् अथवा ठुलो बोटमा export होस्, that doesn't matter, right? So now the benefit is repeatable. We can use that container image at multiple locations. self-contained environment हुन्छ, software run the same in different environments. So developers को ल्यापटप मा नि सेम कोड रन हुन्छ, टेस्ट मा नि त्यही कोड रन हुने भयो, एकचोटि प्याकेज भइसकेपछि प्रोडक्सनमा पनि त्यो रन हुने भयो। यो भनेको हजुरको डेभलपर ल्यापटप भनेको सानो बोर्ड भयो, टेस्ट भनेको अलि ठुलो बोर्ड र प्रोडक्सन भने धेरै ठुलो बोर्ड, तर कन्टेनर त सेम छ। सो जुन्नैमा पनि बोकेर लग्यो भने इट्स गोइङ टु बी रिचिङ टु अ डेस्टिनेसन। And it's faster to launch and stop and terminate than virtual machines because containers are compact, portable. Tappa TPU, rakdiu, and then that's going to work. So they're very faster to launch and they consume very less amount of CPU and RAM, and they are very easier and portable to manage. So these are containers. Now, as I previously mentioned, once the container is created, we need a medium to export it, to run it. So Docker is a software platform that enables you to build, test, and deploy applications quickly. You can run containers on Docker. Containers are created from a template called image. Now, a container has everything that software application needs to run that I told previously only, right? A container contains your application, the dependencies, the configurations, the operating system, and a lot of other stuffs that's needed to run an application. So it's a compact image, and we can run that image on any machine, anywhere, either it's Windows or Linux or Mac, it's going to work the same way. So here also it says container has everything that software needs to run: libraries, system tools, code, and runtime. Now, let's see the difference between container and virtual machines. Now, virtual machines, we looked a bit ago, it was EC2. EC2 लाई हामीले virtual machine भन्छौँ, right? So, अब यहाँनिर हेर्नु भने एउटा physical server छ, physical server माथि एउटा operating system run भइरहेछ. On top of that, there is a hypervisor. This is a virtualization layer using which AWS ले एउटा ठुलो physical server लाई multiple virtual server मा break गरेर हामीलाई provide गर्छ. Now, you guys have used virtualization tool like VMware अथवा VirtualBox. Anyone have used VMware or VirtualBox in their college time to do some sort of projects? Awesome. So VMware ले के गर्थ्यो भनेपछि हजुरले Windows को machine मा त्यसलाई डाउनलोड गर्नुभयो भने using that you can create or install another operating system on top of that, right? Using the same resources of my laptop. So same thing happens on the AWS also. AWS ले के गर्छ एउटा ठुलो physical server लाई operating system on top of that host गरेर एउटा एकदमै high level को hypervisor install गर्छ त्यसमा, which is a virtualization layer, and breaks that physical layer into multiple virtual machines that we use as an EC2 instance. And that is fine, right? Virtually, we can install multiple operating systems on our local machines as well. Now, when it comes to containers and virtual machines, if we see these three virtual machines, we have three applications, right? App 1, App 2, and App 3. अब तीनटै एप्लिकेसन मैले होस्ट गर्नलाई तीनटा EC2 बनाउँछु, VM1, VM2, VM3. Now VM1 बनाउनलाई, this is VM1 simply means EC2 instance. So एउटा EC2 instance बनाउनलाई मैले के गर्नु पर्यो? AMI चुज गर्नु पर्यो, which is an operating system. त्यसपछि त्यो भित्र मैले युजर डेटामा सर्टेनली कोडहरु लेखेका थिए, यो कोडहरु डिप्लोय गर्नु पर्यो, Apache इन्स्टल गर्नु पर्यो हैन. And then for the second EC2 also, for App 2 also I have to do the same thing, for App 3 also I have to do the same thing. And it's going to be too tedious to update the packages, to install things, and to manage the paths, right? But if I Dockerize that, if I convert this App 1, App 2, App 3 into container images, it's going to be very easy. So I'll create a single EC2 instance. And then on top of that, I'll of course install an operating system, and one single EC2 instance will be created. And on top of that, I will install Docker on my EC2 instance, and then using that Docker, I will be able to run these container images within seconds on my EC2 instance, consuming less amount of CPU and memory in comparison with these three applications hosted on three virtual machines. So here you save the cost, it's easier to manage, and it provides a lot of other capabilities. So you run 3 containers on one EC2 instance, and for the virtual machine, you run 3 virtual machines on 3 EC2 instances. So Docker provides us that portability. So that's why containers are very famous nowadays, right? You heard a lot of Kubernetes words, because Kubernetes is an advanced open source container management tool that is widely used by organizations like Google and Amazon and other big organizations like Netflix, right, to manage their applications at a higher scale. So we can do that using containers. So we looked into container versus virtual machines. Now, using Docker, we converted our application into a Docker container, right? Image, we can say a Docker container image. Now, we need to run that container image onto the AWS. So for running the container image onto the AWS, there are 2 services. The first is Amazon Elastic Container Service, which is also called Amazon ECS. So it's a highly scalable, fast container management service. It orchestrates the running of Docker containers. It maintains and scales the fleet of nodes that you run containers on. It removes the complexity of standing up infrastructure. So it integrates with other AWS services like Elastic Load Balancing, Security Group, EBS Volumes, IAM roles. So if you use Amazon ECS for container management, you can make use of other capabilities of AWS with your container and enhance the container management at a higher level. So container A, container B, you can run on Amazon ECS. So in the background, it creates EC2 instances, but you don't have to go ahead inside this EC2 instances and install Docker, but because the Docker is automatically installed on top of these EC2 instances. So it makes the container management very much easier. So you on the ECS, you create ECS cluster, and inside that cluster, you can go ahead and define tags definitions where you can define container images and then define how many number of containers you want to run, and then click on create, and then everything works perfectly. You guys can go ahead and try this. So Amazon cluster options. The key question here is, do you want to manage Amazon ECS cluster that run the container? If yes, create EC2 cluster backed by Amazon. EC2 provides more granular control over infrastructure. And if no, then you can go ahead and choose Amazon EC2 cluster backed by AWS Fargate. So there are 2 mediums of ECS cluster. Now ECS cluster is just the main server that is responsible for managing the containers. So there are 2 ways. One is you can create the ECS cluster on Amazon EC2. So if you do that, हजुरले Amazon EC2 create गरेर cluster create गर्नुभयो भनेपछि you get the granular control. हजुरले operating system choose गर्न पाउनुभयो, हजुरले instance type choose गर्न पाउनुभयो, हजुरले storage choose गर्न पाउनुभयो, right? But if you don't want that hassle, you can go ahead with something called AWS Fargate, which is a serverless mechanism of hosting your containers. So serverless, that simply means there is no servers, although there are servers, but that servers are managed by AWS itself. So it's easier to maintain, and you can then focus on your application instead of the infrastructure, because the infrastructure is managed by AWS itself, right? So if you see this image here, if you are going to use Amazon ECS cluster backed by Amazon EC2, you manage the operating system, you manage the Docker engine, and you manage the container application as well. But if you use AWS ECS cluster backed by Fargate, the underlying operating system and Docker engine are managed by AWS, and you are only responsible for managing your Docker containers. So it's totally under your choice which one of the type you are going to choose, either Fargate or Amazon EC2 type. Now, what is Kubernetes? Now, the question can be, okay, Docker पहिल्यै थियो त्यहाँनिर कन्टेनर चलाउनलाई, कन्टेनर म्यानेज गर्नलाई, यो कुबरनेटिस किन आएको? Because Kubernetes has a lot of capabilities that Docker doesn't have. So Kubernetes is an open source software for container orchestration. Here, orchestration means management. So deploy and manage containerized application that scale. The same toolset can be used on premises and in the cloud. So Kubernetes provides you the higher capabilities of managing your containers by using load balancing. It can be horizontal load balancing, vertical load balancing. It gives you the capability of rollbacks, rollouts, failover mechanisms, right? Enhance monitoring, load balancing, auto scaling. Each of these capabilities are inbuilt with Kubernetes, and it provides a high degree of container orchestration. Right, so it complements Docker. Docker enables you to run multiple containers on a single OS host, whereas Kubernetes orchestrates multiple Docker hosts itself. It automates container provisioning, the networking, the load distribution, the scaling. It has that capability of automating each of these. That's why Kubernetes is too famous in the market. And if you have that requirement of running your workloads on Kubernetes, then you can use the AWS service called AWS EKS Kubernetes service that enables you to run Kubernetes on AWS. It is certified Kubernetes conformant. That is, it validates, it has that licensing that it follows all the Kubernetes related rules. So it supports easy migration. It supports Linux and Windows containers. It's compatible with Kubernetes community tools and supports popular Kubernetes add-ons. You can use Amazon EKS to manage clusters to Amazon EC2 compute instances, run containers that are orchestrated by containers on those instances. So you can use Amazon EKS for higher level of container management on AWS. Now, once you convert an application into a container image, that image needs to be stored somewhere, right? So if I go ahead and let me see if I have some Docker images with me. Yeah, you can see I have multiple Docker images, right? One says Postgres, one says MOF test app, one says Nginx, one says Hello World, one says KTest Minikube, right? These are the Docker images. This is the image of Postgres. So this is the Postgres database image. Now, these images are stored on my local device. Now, if someone steals my local device, my images are gone. If someone mistakenly deletes my images are gone. So my next approach would be to store these images in a centralized location. Now, one can be Docker Hub. So Docker Hub, container image repository, we can keep our Docker images over here as well. And if I want to store the Docker images on the AWS, then I can use a service called AWS Elastic Container Registry or Amazon ECR. So Amazon ECR is a fully managed Docker container registry that makes it easy for developers to store, manage, and deploy Docker container images. So the images are like मजाले मैले local machine को सट्टा Docker container registry मा राख्न सक्छु using Amazon ECR. So let me show you. I might have some images. ECR. ECR only, so Elastic Container Registry. Yeah, you can see there are a lot of images, right? APJ open mic image, this test interview, this test ECR, this all are used for testing. So if I go here, I have an image URI. I can copy this image URI and I can download this image on my local machine as well. And I can upload these images on my Amazon ECR as well. So to upload, there are commands. I can show you the commands. Yeah, if I go and create a new repository, this test repo, I can choose the encryption configuration. I'll choose each and everything default, this one. And if I go and click on push commands, you can see first I need to authenticate, and then I need to tag my repo, tag my container image, and then accordingly I can push my local image to AWS ECR. So एउटा centralized ठाउँमा चाहिँ मेरो इमेजेसहरु राखिराख्नु पर्ने भयो हैन. If that's my requirement, that's a best practice. So you can store your Docker container images on AWS ECR. That supports Docker, team collaboration, access control, third-party integration, Amazon ECS integration as well. So this was end of our section 4, where we learned about the basics of container, what Docker is, and what are the AWS services using which we can run our container at the best way possible. The first one is Amazon ECS. And if we are willing to deploy our containers using the power of Kubernetes, then we have Amazon EKS. And if we want to store our images, container images centrally on the AWS, we have a service called Amazon ECR that enables you to store, manage, and deploy your Docker containers on AWS. Any questions on the section of this part of containers? Awesome. Now you guys need to practice things, right? मैले Docker भने हैन. I talked about Kubernetes. You guys need to have that curiosity inside you. Go ahead and learn about that. ChatGPT छ आज भोलि मजाले त्यहाँ गएर like you have a teacher, you have a ChatGPT, you have a teacher. You ask your questions, you get the answer, you get the scripts, you get the steps, how to implement a Docker, how to run that Docker container on ECS, how to run that Docker container at Kubernetes, right? So you need to go ahead and get your hands dirty. Awesome, let's move ahead. So we have the final section, that is Introduction to AWS Lambda. कति जनाले AWS Lambda को नाम सुन्नु भएको छ पहिला अथवा युज गर्नु भएको छ कहिले? Anybody who have listened the name Lambda before or have used it? Type 1, not type 2. सुनेको मात्र. Listened. Yep. Automated for task scheduling. Awesome. I guess it is serverless. Yes, sir. It's serverless. Yeah, let's move ahead, right? So Lambda is an event-driven serverless service. Now, when I call it event-driven, I'm telling it by choice, right? So it's a serverless event-driven compute service because its main function is to work based on events. So it's a serverless service. Now, anybody can tell me what a serverless means? Serverless in simple terms, what is serverless? Can anyone give it a try? You can write it on the chat. Only run called functions. I didn't got that. So serverless simply means there are servers in the background associated with that service on top of which that service is running, but we don't have to manage that servers. That management of servers is associated with the cloud vendor. In our case, it's AWS. The security patching the update of the resources that are running, right? Each and everything is AWS responsibility. That's why it's called serverless. We don't need to manage any servers at our end. So it's a serverless service. So you simply upload your code, and then you run your code, and your code only runs when it is triggered, and you pay only for the compute time that you use, right? So benefits of Lambda: it supports multiple programming languages. It's completely automated administration. It has built-in fault tolerance. It supports the orchestration of multiple functions, and you pay per use pricing. So it gives with pay per use pricing only. So let me go ahead and show you one example, right? What I'll do is I'll go here and type Lambda. Lambda calls. So you guys can see it says run code without thinking about servers. I don't have to worry about servers because this is a serverless service, right? The thinking part is done by AWS, not by us, right? We only focus on the code. We'll create a function. I'll create a function from scratch. Let me name it demo test function. And I can choose the programming language of my choice. Let me choose Python 3.2 build. I can choose the architecture. It can be an ARM. It can be an x86 architecture. For now, I'll choose default. And there are a lot of functions, right? You can run your VPC within a VPC, sorry, Lambda within a VPC, in a private subnet or public subnet. You can do the authentication purpose, right? You can enable encryption. You can add tags, right? Name, owner, environment, a lot of other stuff. You can enable public function URL. There are a lot of stuffs, but we'll go with the clean one, with the basics one only, the basic options. We'll click and create function. And our function is going to be created within a minute. Right. Once the function is there, I have chosen the programming language as Python 3.2. I will push a simple Python code. Simple Python code that says, I love AWS Cloud Club Pokhara, right? To print this one. So what I'll do is I'll remove all this default code. I'll simply paste it over here. That has a message. And it prints this, right? And then status code is 200. So I'll simply save this, click on deploy to deploy the changes. Click on deploy. So it's updating the function. It's saving the changes, successfully updated. And if I go ahead and click on test, give it a test name, click on test, create a new test event. Name it the CC test, and then click on save, and then click on test again, and you can see the output shows the body, I love AWS Cloud Club Pokhara, and it took 87 seconds. So build duration will be 87 milliseconds for me. The memory size used was 128 MB and duration was 1.77 milliseconds to provide me this output. Now, this is how much easy it's to use AWS Lambda. So you can simply upload your code as well in zip file, or either it's in Amazon S3. You can do a lot of other steps with AWS Lambda. Now, the coolest thing is you can add triggers. Right? You can add triggers. So, for example, someone uploads an image to an S3 bucket, then automatically trigger this Lambda function. र यो Lambda function trigger हुन्छ र यो Lambda function भित्र जे कोड छ त्यो कोड रन हुन्छ अनि त्यो रन भएको कोडले के आउटपुट देखाउने. Maybe we can add destination as well. Maybe it can be if the Lambda is successful, I can send that successful message to a SNS topic and then send a email notification or SMS notification that, hey, the Lambda function ran successfully, or I can choose SQSQ, or I can choose to use another Lambda function. So यो Lambda function successfully run हुने बित्तिकै next के होस् अर्को पनि Lambda function run होस् भनेर चाहन्छु भनेपछि मैले destination नि choose गरेर multiple Lambda function लाई trigger गराउन चाहन्छु. That's why I told you guys AWS Lambda function अथवा Lambda is an event driven solution. So we can add trigger so that if any event happens, the Lambda function is triggered, and then we can add the destination as well based on our requirement. I'll go back to the slides. So AWS Lambda event sources. So event source can be, the trigger source can be S3, the DynamoDB, SNS topic, SQSQ, API gateway, load balancer, and many more. So these services, if any event happens in each of these services, it will trigger the Lambda function. And then it is going to send the logs to the CloudWatch as well, or you can run any other code also, which I showed you previously. So again, a function code can contain dependencies, execution role, and a lot of other steps, and does that code running thing accordingly. Now, one example of it can be to schedule Lambda function to start and stop EC2 instances. So I have a Lambda code written that if executed is going to identify the EC2 instances with tag environment dev. I have written that logic on my Lambda code, right, on Python. Now I have used AWS CloudWatch event to set a time-based cron job. So every evening, 5 बजे मेरो cron job run हुन्छ. The cron job run हुने बित्तिकै that triggers Amazon AWS Lambda. Lambda को कोड ट्रिगर हुन्छ, कोड रन हुन्छ, र कोडमा मैले के डिफाइन गरेको छु लजिक भनेपछि इन्भाइरोमेन्ट डे भएको ट्याग भएका EC2 इन्स्टेन्सलाई आइडेन्टिफाई गर्ने र त्यसलाई तुरुन्तै स्टप गरिदिने. So that action is performed by the Lambda function, and similarly we can stop or we start that EC2 instance again with a time-based CloudWatch event. Now it can be 9 बजे डेली बिहान मेरो इन्भाइरोमेन्ट डेभ भएको EC2 instances identify गरेर फेरि त्यसलाई स्टार्ट गर्दै, because dev instances doesn't needs to be running at the off hours. To save the cost, we can use the Lambda function for this use case as well. That's why it's an event-driven serverless service, right? It works on the event basis. So there should be an event that is going to trigger that Lambda function. That Lambda function runs. The logic, the code that we have written in the Lambda, it's going to be executed and then perform the respective actions. Another one can be image is uploaded to an S3 bucket. I have a Lambda that has a code logic that converts that image into multiple thumbnails, right? So once एउटा इमेज कसैले अपलोड गर्ने बित्तिकै एउटा इभेन्ट ट्रिगर भयो, इभेन्ट ट्रिगर हुने बित्तिकै ल्याम्डा ट्रिगर भयो, ल्याम्डामा यस्तो कोड छ, त्यो कोडले त्यो एउटा इमेजलाई ब्रेक डाउन गरेर मल्टिपल थम्बनेल्सहरु बनाएर के गर्छ, अर्को टार्गेट बकेटमा त्यसलाई राखिदिन्छ. अगेन दिस इज द एक्जाम्पल अफ इभेन्ट ड्रिभन फंक्शन or event driven solution, right? So this is an event based Lambda function example of creating thumbnail images. Now you need to be very careful about quotas. AWS ma each and every services ko quota haru cha, हैन? Now the quotas are two types, एउटा soft limit and hard limit quotas. Now hard limit quotas cannot be changed, but soft limit quotas can be changed. Now soft limit quota for Lambda is concurrent execution is 1000. That means a single Lambda function can run 1000 requests at a time, parallelly, concurrently. And if the request is more than 1000, it's going to show us exceptions. And in that case, we need to increase this concurrency execution number. Function and layer storage is by default 75 GB. We can also go ahead and increase it. The hard limits for individual function is the maximum function memory allocation is 10 to 40 MB only. The function timeout is 15 minutes. So हजुरको ल्याम्डा फंक्शनमा कुनै यस्तो कोड छ जुन 15 मिनेट भन्दा बढी टाइम लिइराछ रन हुनलाई भनेपछि ल्याम्डा फंक्शन is not a good place for you. You have to go ahead and choose some other sort of compute solutions like EC2 or container solutions like ECS and Kubernetes EKS. Right? So you need to be very careful about quotas also when you are architecting a solution on AWS. So this was the section about serverless computing that enables you to build and run applications and services without provisioning or managing servers. And that service name is AWS Lambda, a compute service that is serverless, that provides built-in fault tolerance and automatic scaling. Why? Because it's serverless. It automatically scales in the background and it's handled by AWS. It's not our responsibility. That's why it's called serverless. And an event source in AWS service or developer created application that trigger a Lambda function to run. So there should be an event source or there should be a developer created application that triggers the Lambda. So the Lambda function needs to be triggered so that it can run the code that resides inside it. The maximum memory is 10 to 40 MB. The maximum runtime for Lambda is 15 minutes. Now these are hard limits, so you need to be very careful about that. Any questions on the Lambda part? Yeah, you can use Ravi Vishnu. You can surely use Kafka or RabbitMQ, right? Instead of Lambda, and that totally depends on your requirement, right? So if things doesn't work with Lambda, then you can always go ahead and use other services as well. Any other questions, guys, on this part? Now I'll take more 10 minutes most probably, and we'll end this. So AWS works on AWS services. Again, I didn't got your question, Ellen. So do you mean AWS needs to be triggered by AWS services only? And if that's your question, no. You can trigger AWS Lambda functions through your application as well, right? You don't need AWS services only as your source to trigger AWS Lambda. It can be application code, or it can be any sort of application level logic that you can use and use that AWS API to trigger that and run that. Did I answer your question, Ellen? Awesome. Okay, हामी अगाडि बढौँ है त. I'll take more 10 minutes, guys. Just be with me, right? एउटा मात्रै section बाँकी छ अब, and then I'll take the final questions, and then I'll provide you some feedbacks, and then we'll get this section of mine sorted out. So again, you have labs in your course related with Lambda. You can perform that. Now we have the last section of compute called Introduction to AWS Elastic Beanstalk, which is a platform as a service. Now, if I see PaaS, platform as a service, I go to images, and if I go over here, open this image, let me open image in new tab. Okay, no problem. So, as I previously mentioned, AWS Elastic Beanstalk is a platform as a service. So you can see The rate part is managed by the service provider. Now, in our case, the service provider is AWS. So AWS manages the networking, the storage, the servers, the virtualization, the operating system, the middleware, the runtime. We are responsible for the data and management of application only. Isn't that great, right? Each and everything is controlled and managed by AWS. We have to care about data and how we want to run the application. And that is the beauty of platform as a service. And Elastic Beanstalk supports that platform as a service model. Let's talk about that. So Elastic Beanstalk is an easy way to get your web application up and running on the cloud. It's a managed service that automatically handles infrastructure provisioning and configurations, deployment, load balancing, automatic scaling, health monitoring, analysis and debugging, logging, and there is no additional charge for Elastic Beanstalk. You pay only for the underlying resources that is used by Elastic Beanstalk. So if you see over here, Elastic Beanstalk supports Java, .NET, PHP, Node.js, Python, Ruby, Go, and Docker. And here you can see the host, operating system, language interpreter, application server, HTTP server. Each and everything is managed by AWS. You only manage your code. So you have a code of your application. You go and upload your code and your application starts to work like a butter. So you upload your code. Elastic Beanstalk automatically handles the deployment. So it installs Apache, it installs Nginx, Passenger, Puma, or Microsoft Internet Information Service. These are the virtual servers that are used to host our applications. If I show you the example, if you see over here, previously हामीले के गरेम भनेपछि मेरो EC2 इन्स्टेन्समा मैले म्यानुअली के गरे Apache server install गरेको थिए, right? And then I enabled that, and then I started that, and then I have to configure that, right? And again I have to restart that Apache server. किनभने EC2 is an infrastructure as a service. This belongs to this model where virtualization, server, storage, networking is only AWS part, whereas the operating system, middleware, runtime, data, application, each and everything is customer's part. Right? The runtime we used was Apache in our case, but in platform as a service, the runtime is also installed by AWS itself. So if I show you the example, you can, here, you can see, you can either use Apache or Nginx, and the configuration of Apache and Nginx is itself done by AWS. So you just upload your code of web application and everything works awesomely. Everything is managed by AWS only. So benefits of Elastic Beanstalk, it's fast and simple to start using. Its developer productivity increases, right? Developer don't have to focus on managing the infrastructure. They just focus on coding and the code. And it's very easy to it's very difficult to outgrow. That simply means it's very easy to grow, as we can implement load balancing and auto scaling on top of Elastic Beanstalk. And it provides us the complete resource control, which programming language I want to select, how many number of EC2 instances I want to run, if I want to implement load balancing, if I want to implement auto scaling, if I want to attach a database. So it provides me each and every control. If I want to select a respective operating system, it provides me all that control on top of it. So there is a lab, right, with Elastic Beanstalk as well that you guys can perform at your end. Let me show you the console of AWS Beanstalk. ELASTIC, Elastic Beanstalk. Here comes Elastic Beanstalk. I can simply click on create application, and we can create Elastic Beanstalk for web server environment that is used to run websites, web applications, or web APIs that serve HTTP requests. And another is for worker environments to run worker application that processes long-running workloads on demand and perform tasks on schedule. So for now, let's choose web server environment. Let's name it Cloud Club, Pokhara, right? I'll not add tags for now. Platform. Okay, so which programming language I want to choose? Let's go with Python. I can choose the Python version. Recommended is this one, which is fine. Now I don't have a code, right? If I would have a code, I would simply go ahead and load from my local device. But currently I'll use the sample application that is provided by AWS itself. Now you can see Elastic Beanstalk has presets. If I want my application to be hosted on a single instance, I want it to be hosted on a single instance with spot instances to save the cost. If I want to host my application in a high availability manner using spot and on-demand instances, or I want to do the custom configuration. Let's go with custom configuration. Click on next. I have to choose the service roles. Don't know which one was this. Let me choose this one for now. I don't want to choose keep here for now. Next. Okay, so it's error that says you can't enable manage platform update for an environment. Select a service that has Elastic SMS custom policy manage policy. Okay. So this role, let me fix this ASAP. IAM. This is the role, AWS service role for Elastic Beanstalk. Sorry. Service role policy. I have to add this also. Right, copy. And as this is an AWS managed policy, I'll not be able to add that, so I have to create a new role. Sorry, it's for compute. This is fine. Worked here, whipped here. Next, Cloud Club, Elastic Beanstalk role, and then create the role. And then once that is created, let me select that. Still not created. Or I can simply click on here, create role. Okay, this was the one, I think. Let me try this one as well. Yeah, that one got over here. Let me select new. Yep, that fixed the problem. VPC, kun VPC ma garne haina? I previously told Elastic Beanstalk provides you a full control on what sort of VPC to choose, what sort of instance type to choose, right? I need public IP addresses. I can choose the availability zones. I can even integrate a database, but currently I don't need a database. Right, I'll click on next. Oh, I don't need a database. I disabled that, which is fine. Next. Root volume, container default, that will be 8 GB for now. Monitoring interval 5 minutes. No, I don't want. Yeah, I need to disable this for now. I can choose the security group. I can choose load because I chose custom configuration. यानिर मैले load balancing गर्ने कि single instance मात्रै बनाउने choose गर्न पाए. I'll choose single instance. I'll choose on demand for now. I'll choose x86 architecture. I'll choose t3.micro instance type. The MIID is this, which is fine. Everything looks perfect. I can click on next. I don't want detailed monitoring. I want basic. Managed updates. Okay. Every Saturday it will apply the updates. I'll choose the default for now. Rolling updates. Now, the best thing about Elastic Beanstalk is it provides you different update mechanisms, right? So you want to update to version 2 through a fixed patch size or other stuffs, you can do that as well, right? There are a lot of other. So for now, I'll choose this. Maybe I can fixed. There is a lot of stuffs over here. Let's just use all the defaults. So here comes the platform service. What I need to install? Let's install Nginx only. I don't want to enable X-ray. I don't want to do a lot of other stuffs. I'll simply click on next. And it says managed platform requires enhanced health reporting. Health reporting. Okay, let's just choose this one now. Just want to show you a demo, and once you choose everything is okay, you can simply click on create, and your application will start. So this way you so हजुरले के गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ, कोड मात्रै अपलोड गर्ने यसमा, कुन VPC मा, कुन भर्चुअल सर्भर, कुन स्पेक्सहरु अटो स्केलिङ इनेबल गर्ने कि नगर्ने त्यो सबै चुज मात्रै गर्नुस्, क्रिएटमा गर्दिनुस्. इन द ब्याकग्राउन्ड इट्स गोइङ टु डु अल द सेटअप फर यु. You don't have to go ahead and manually do the steps. This handles each and everything. Within a minute, my application will be in a working state. So it says the event created a security group. It's automatically creating things for me. The health is nothing for now because the instance is still being created. Naya Elastic IP ne aisakya cha. Now you see, I used graphical user interface to just enable things by just clicking on the options, right? And in the background, it automatically is doing this stuff. It has created a security group. It has created an Elastic IP. Let's refresh it. So it is waiting for the EC2 instance to launch. This might take a few minutes, it's saying, which is fine. Still the health is not visible because the server is creating. We can see the logs, we can see the monitoring, we can see the alarms, we can see the manage updates. We can do a lot of steps with Elastic Beanstalk. So if our requirement is to follow the platform as a service model for the deployment of our application, then we can surely go ahead with AWS Elastic Beanstalk. Right? So this ends our section 6, which was about Elastic Beanstalk that enhances developers' productivity because it simplifies the process of deploying your application and reduces management complexity. It supports multiple programming languages and there is no charge of using it, but you pay only for the AWS resources that Elastic Beanstalk creates. So this is the module wrap-up for the compute section. So in this module, we learned about different AWS compute services in AWS. We learned about EC2. We saw its demo as well, the functionalities of Amazon EC2. the basic functions in Amazon EC to build a virtual computing environment, cost optimization elements that are associated with EC2. We also looked into AWS Lambda, AWS Elastic Beanstalk, and we also identified how to run containerized applications in a cluster of managed servers using AWS ECS and AWS EKS that provides two versions, two ways of deploying your container application. One is using your EC2 instance, and another one is AWS Fargate. That is again the serverless way of deploying your container applications without worrying about managing the underlying infrastructure, because that is managed by AWS itself. So this ends our module 6. Let's do a knowledge check. Which AWS service helps developers quickly deploy resources which can make use of different programming languages such as .NET and Java?
AWS Elastic Beanstalk.
Yeah, you guys, anyone further can try. You guys can write the answers in the chat. Yeah, let's see. So it's Elastic Beanstalk that helps developers quickly deploy resources using different programming languages, right? These are the additional resources. You can find these on your slides as well, right? Sorry, on your learning material that has been given by the Cloud Club team. So you go ahead and explore things. You learn from the AWS public documentations, right? If you have any questions, you Google it. You have ChatGPT, you have YouTube, you have a lot of learning materials. The only thing that you need to focus in is to have curiosity, to have questions. So until and unless you don't have questions, learning is not going to be that fun. Do we get these slides? Yeah, maybe I can make that available. I know. एकचोटि कुरा गर्छु क्लाउड क्लबको टिमसँग, and if that's possible, I'll talk with the AWS team. And one thing, how many of you guys are familiar with a sandbox account, a test account, a real test account associated with your course? कतिजना अवेर हुनुहुन्छ? How many guys you are aware about a real test account, real test AWS account associated with your course that has been given by Cloud Club? If you are aware about that, type 1. If not, type 2. So someone is saying no. No. Okay. Is it okay if someone shares, कसैले मलाई share गर्न सक्छ screen and log in into their course so that I can show you guys where you can access that real test account, where you can test a lot of custom things like creating EC2 instances, Elastic Beanstalk, and other stuffs. Can someone share their screen? एकजनाले share गर्दा हुन्छ. युजर नेम र पासवर्ड त चाहियो नि. युजर नेम र पासवर्ड नभइकन त छिर्ने कसरी भन्ने कुरा हो. Yeah, I can see someone's screen. कसको screen हो यो? ए ओके, ल एकचोटि ओके, कहाँ जाम भनेपछि you go to modules, right? अलि माथि जानुस्, अलि माथि. Yeah, exactly. There's a sandbox environment. त्यहाँनिर क्लिक गर्नुस् त्यसको माथि, and you will be load sandbox environment in a new window. त्यसमा क्लिक गर्नुस्. Exactly. So this is a test account, right? Agree गर्दा हुन्छ. यो एउटा सानो टर्म हो. तल गएर एग्री गर्नुस्. I agree. And then student view, yeah, student view. एक्ज्याक्टली। अब यहाँनिर हजुरले हेर्नुभयो भने यो AWS को स्यान्डबक्स एकाउन्टमा हजुरले के गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ त्यो सबै यहाँनिर भनिदिएको छ। एकचोटि तर स्क्रोल गर्नु त हजुरले सर्भिसेस एन्ड अदर रिस्ट्रिक्सन्स हैन। सो द फलोइङ सर्भिसेस क्यान बी युज्ड, अलि माथि स्पेसिफिक लिमिटेशन्स एप्लाई एज डकुमेन्टेड, सर्भिसेस रिस्ट्रिक्टेड आर सब्जेक्ट टु चेन्ज। सो क्लाउड लाइन चुज गर्न पाउनुभयो, क्लाउड फर्मेसन, क्लाउड फ्रन्ट, क्लाउड सेल, क्लाउड ट्रेल, क्लाउड वाच, EC2 अटो स्केलिङ, पिन स्टाल पनि चलाउन पाउनुभयो, EC2 बनाउन पाउनुभयो। अलि तल जाँदै जानुहोस्, EBS भोल्युम हैन, यु क्यान युज also you can also test load balancing, IM हरू पनि हैन, हल्का फुल्का ल्याम्डा पनि बनाउन सक्नुहुँदो रहेछ, डेटाबेस नि बनाउन दिन्छ यहाँनिर हैन, राउट 53 पनि बनाउन दिनु रहेछ। यु क्यान नट रेजिस्टर अ डोमेन हैन, बट धेरै जसो कुराहरू यसमा गर्न मिल्छ। सो अब के गर्नुस्, त्यहाँनिर स्टार्ट ल्याबमा क्लिक गर्नुस्। त्यहाँनिर स्टार्ट ल्याब भन्ने छ अलि माथि, त्यसलाई छोड्दिनुस्, त्यसलाई हजुरले पछि पढ्दा हुन्छ। अहिलेलाई स्टार्ट ल्याबमा क्लिक गर्नुस्, सबैले हेर्दा हुन्छ है। अनि इफ समवान फ्रम क्लाउड क्लब इज वाचिङ हैन, उहाँहरूले पनि सेयर गर्दा हुन्छ पछि स्टुडेन्ट्सहरूलाई। स्टार्ट ल्याबमा क्लिक गर्नुस्, इट विल टेक अ बिट टाइम राइट, लाइक अ मिनट, लेट्स वेट। Exactly. Now, once this lab is started, it's active for 180 minutes only. So 180 मिनट भने कति भयो, 3 घण्टा, 3 घण्टा जति भयो। 3 घण्टामा हजुरले जे जति पनि रिसोर्सेस बनाएर टेस्ट गर्न पाउनुभयो र 3 घण्टापछि हजुरको सेसन एक्सपायर हुन्छ। द्याट मिन्स each and every resources that you have created within a 3 hours that will be deleted. र फेरि हजुरले सेसन स्टार्ट गर्नुस्, फेरि ल्याब्सहरु र टेस्टिङहरु मजाले गर्नुस्, राइट। सो ल्याब स्ट्याटस इन क्रिएसन, अहिलेलाई यसलाई काट दिनुस्, ठीक छ, यसलाई काट दिनुस्। अनि AWS मा क्लिक गर्नुस्, स्टार्ट ल्याबको साइडमा छ नि हजुर, त्यहाँ क्लिक गर्नुस्। एन्ड देन द म्याजिक ह्यापन्स, यु आर रिडाइरेक्टेड टु अ टेस्ट, अ रियल टेस्ट AWS अकाउन्ट। यहाँनिर गएर हजुरले EC2, S3 हैन, जुन सर्भिसेसहरु एलाउ गरेको छ त्यो सबै सर्भिसेसहरु चलाउन सक्नुहुन्छ। एकचोटि ल्याम्डामा जानुस् त, ल्याम्डामा जानुस्, LMPDA हजुर, त्यसलाई ओपन गर्नुस्। जस्ट क्रिएट अ स्याम्पल ल्याम्डा, एउटा ल्याम्डा फंक्सन क्रिएट गर्दा हुन्छ। क्रिएट अ ल्याम्डा फंक्सन, नाम दिनुस् कुनै, ठीक छ, Node.js ठीक छ, क्रिएट गर्दा हुन्छ। डिफल्ट नै चुज गर मैले, जस्ट वान्ट टु सी इफ द्याट गेट्स क्रिएटेड। You don't have permission to request copy the following test. Okay, भनेपछि ल्याम्डा चाहिँ बनाउन दिदो रहन्छ हैन, अरु सर्भिसेसहरु चाहिँ दिन्छ यसले। सो त्यो जुन एउटा डक सुरुमा आथ्यो नि, त्यहाँनिर चाहिँ डिफाइन गरेछ त्यसले कुन कन्डिसनमा चाहिँ कुन सर्भिसेसहरु चाहिँ युज गर्न दिने। बट म्याक्सिमम जुन हजुरलाई यो कोर्समा दिएको छ, म्याक्सिमम सर्भिसेसहरु हजुरले युज गरेर चलाउन सक्नुहुन्छ। सो स्यान्डबक्सको युज गर्नुस् हैन, एन्ड देन be curious, ask questions, and that's it. So any final questions, guys? So someone has asked, can you please conduct ISC session too? Okay, maybe I can do a ISC session in the AWS Cloud Club community day, right? Final भइसक्यो हो community day को time. ए हुन्छ, maybe क्लाउड क्लब को इभेन्टमा आई क्यान डु एउटा ISC को सेसन। बट ISC को सेसन भन्दा नि लाइक आई थिंक द बेस्ट टुल वुड बी, किनभने मैले पनि ISC सिकेको भनेको लाइक इन्टरनेटबाट हो, लाइक युट्युब एन्ड गुगल एन्ड टेराफर्म डकुमेन्टेसन। सो आई थिंक द्याट वुड बी अ गुड स्टार्टिङ पोइन्ट हैन। देयर आर लाइक YouTube ma good videos, good YouTube channels that teach Terraform and other infrastructure as code tools from like A to Z. हैन, त्यो 0 to hero course नै छ AWS को YouTube मा, Terraform हरुको, cloud formation हरुको, so you guys can follow that as well. Yeah, maybe in the next session I can do a session on ISC. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, awesome. हुन्छ सो मेरो पार्ट चाहिँ कम्प्लिट भयो होइन मेरो पार्टमा चाहिँ इट वाज मोड्युल 5 and 4 मोड्युल 5 वाज अबाउट नेटवर्किङ एन्ड कन्टेन्ट डेलिभरी मोड्युल 6 वाज अबाउट कम्प्युट अबको बाँकीको मोड्युल भनेको 7 8 9 10 चारवटा मोड्युल छन् विच विल बी टेकन बाई अदर गाइज सो अगेन क्वेसन्सहरू सोध्नुहोस् उहाँहरूलाई नि होइन बुझ्नुहुन्न भनेपछि उहाँहरूलाई घचघच्याउनुहोस् ल मैले हजुरले भनेको यो कुरा बुझिनँ अथवा यहाँनिर कन्फ्युज भयो सो यु 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 बी क्युरियस एन्ड आस्क क्वेसन्स द्याट्स द मेन थिङ ओके सो अगेन आई विल आस्क द फाइनल क्वेसन एनी क्वेसन छ भनेपछि सोद्धा हुन्छ अथवा यु गाइज क्यान रिच मी अन लिङ्क्डइन लेट मी provide you my LinkedIn. So key questions, if you guys have any questions in future, you can directly ping me on LinkedIn and when I'm available, I can help you guys. Yeah, this is my LinkedIn ID. I have pasted that in the chat. ओके हुन्छ त्यसो भए आज ढिलो नै भयो धेरै धेरै धन्यवाद हजुरहरूको टाइमको लागि